They say you never truly know your worth until someone strips it away from you with a few careless words. I'm 71 years old now, and I've learned that revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, calculated, and wrapped in success they never saw coming. My name is Eleanor, and this is the story of how my daughter-in-law called me a burden, how my son stood silent while she did it, and how I turned that humiliation into an empire she now begs to enter. But before I tell you why she's really standing at my gates today, and trust me, that reason will shake you, I need you to do something for me. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching this from. Are you in Texas? New York? Maybe somewhere across the ocean? I want to know who's listening, because this story, it's for anyone who's ever been underestimated, discarded, or told they don't matter anymore. And if you're the kind of person who loves stories about resilience, justice, and watching people get exactly what they deserve, hit that subscribe button right now. Check the description box below. I've got more stories there that'll make you feel seen, heard, and maybe even inspired to reclaim your own power. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. It was a Tuesday in March, unseasonably cold for Virginia. I remember because I'd made my son David's favorite meal, pot roast with carrots and potatoes, the way his father used to love it before he passed. I'd been living with David and his wife, Vanessa, for 8 months by then. 8 months of trying to make myself small, useful, invisible. I'd moved in after I sold my little house in Richmond. The market was good, and David had insisted. "Mom, you shouldn't be alone anymore. Come stay with us. We have the space." Space. What a funny word for what I actually occupied in their home. I had a bedroom on the second floor, next to the guest bathroom that Vanessa had decorated in shades of grey and white, cold, sterile, like a hotel room. I kept my things minimal. A few photographs. My mother's quilt. Books I'd collected over a lifetime of teaching high school English. I paid rent, though David had protested. $500 a month, which Vanessa deposited without acknowledgement. I cooked. I cleaned. I picked up their dry cleaning. I walked their dog, a nervous terrier named Biscuit who peed on the carpet whenever Vanessa raised her voice. I made myself useful because I'd learned early that usefulness was the currency of acceptance in their home. Vanessa was 34, a real estate agent with blonde highlights and a smile that never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me. She wore expensive athleisure and drank green smoothies and talked about manifesting abundance while scrolling through her phone during dinner. David, my only child, had fallen hard for her 6 years ago. I tried to be happy for him. I tried to ignore the way she'd started pulling him away from me even before the wedding. That Tuesday, I'd spent 3 hours cooking. My knees ached, they always did after standing too long, but I wanted everything perfect. David had mentioned that Vanessa's mother might be joining us for dinner, and I knew how important it was to Vanessa that everything look good, taste good, feel impressive. I set the table with the nice dishes, the ones Vanessa kept in the china cabinet for special occasions. I even put out cloth napkins, ironed them myself that morning. 5 o'clock came and went. Then 6. Then 7. I kept the food warm, checking my phone for messages that never came. Biscuit sat at my feet in the kitchen, sensing my anxiety the way dogs do. Finally, at 7:40, I heard the garage door open. Relief flooded through me. They were home. I arranged everything on serving platters, carried them to the dining room, painted on my brightest smile. David walked in first, loosening his tie. He worked in finance, something with investments that I'd never fully understood but that clearly paid well. Vanessa followed, thumbs flying across her phone screen. "Dinner's ready," I said, gesturing to the table. David glanced over, distracted. "Oh, Mom. We ate already. Vanessa had a client dinner thing." The words hit me like cold water. I looked at Vanessa, who hadn't even looked up from her phone. I texted David this morning about it," she said flatly. "Didn't he tell you?" He hadn't. I looked at my son, waiting for him to acknowledge that, to apologize, to see the hours I'd spent, the care I'd taken. He just shrugged. "Sorry, Mom. I must have forgotten to mention it." I stood there, holding a serving spoon, feeling foolish. All that food. All that effort. That's okay. I can put it away. Maybe tomorrow you can. "Actually, Mom," Vanessa cut in, finally looking up from her phone. Her eyes were sharp, assessing. "We need to talk to you about something." My stomach dropped. There's a tone people use when they're about to deliver bad news, A careful flatness that strips away all warmth. She had that tone. Okay, I said slowly. I set down the spoon, my hands suddenly shaking. What's wrong? David and Vanessa exchanged a look. One of those married couple looks that communicates entire conversations in a glance. He nodded slightly, and she took a breath. Eleanor, she began, she never called me Mom, not once in 6 years. David and I have been talking, and we think it might be time for you to consider other living arrangements. The room tilted. Other? What do you mean? We mean, she continued, her voice taking on a practiced quality, like she'd rehearsed this, that having you here isn't working for us anymore. We're trying to start a family, and we need our space. We need our privacy. And honestly... She paused, glancing at David again, who was suddenly very interested in his shoes. Honestly, it feels like you're becoming a bit of a burden. Burden. That word hung in the air between us like smoke. Heavy. Suffocating. A burden, I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Don't take it personally, Vanessa said, which is what people always say when they want you to take it very personally. It's just that you're here all the time, and it's a lot. We can't have friends over without worrying about whether you need something. We can't just relax in our own home. And the financial aspect, I mean, $500 a month doesn't even cover utilities. I looked at David. My son. The boy I'd raised alone after his father died when he was 12. The boy I'd worked 2 jobs to put through college. The man I'd taught to tie his shoes, to drive a car, to treat people with kindness and respect. David. I said his name like a question, like a plea. He finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes was worse than anger. It was discomfort. Guilt. Weakness. He opened his mouth, closed it, then said quietly, Mom, maybe it would be better. You could find a nice apartment, have your own space again. Be independent. Independent. As if I hadn't been independent my entire adult life until they'd convinced me to give that up. Your mother is just dead weight, Vanessa said, and even though she was looking at David when she said it, even though she delivered it like she was reading a fact from a report, I felt every syllable like a physical blow. We need to focus on our future, not on babysitting her. Dead weight. I waited. I waited for David to defend me, to tell her she'd gone too far, that you don't talk about someone's mother that way. I waited for him to remember who I was, what I'd sacrificed, how much I'd given. He said nothing. The silence stretched out, filling with my humiliation, my disbelief, my breaking heart. Biscuit whimpered from somewhere in the next room. The pot roast was getting cold on the dining room table. And I stood there, 71 years old, being told I was dead weight by a woman young enough to be my daughter while my actual son stared at the floor. I see, I finally said. And I did see. I saw everything clearly for the first time in 8 months. Maybe for the first time in years. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I simply nodded, turned, and walked upstairs to my cold grey bedroom. I heard them talking in low voices below me as I pulled out my old suitcase from the closet. I heard Vanessa's laugh, sharp and relieved, probably pleased that I'd taken it so well. I packed methodically. Clothes. Toiletries. My mother's quilt. The photographs of David as a boy. I almost left those, but couldn't quite bring myself to. My books, my few pieces of jewelry. Everything fit into 2 suitcases and a carry-on bag. Isn't that something? 7 decades of life, reduced to luggage. It took me 40 minutes. When I came back downstairs, rolling my suitcases behind me, David and Vanessa were in the living room. She was on her laptop. He was watching television. They both looked up, startled. Mom, what are you doing? David asked. Leaving, I said simply. You wanted me gone. I'm going. Wait, we didn't mean tonight, he started. Yes, you did, I interrupted, and my voice was steady, calm. Or maybe you didn't, but it doesn't matter. I heard you. Both of you. And I understand. Vanessa at least had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. Eleanor, you don't have to leave right this second. We can help you find a place first. I'll find my own place, I said. I've been doing things on my own for a very long time. I walked to the door, struggled briefly with the suitcases on the front step. Neither of them moved to help me. I loaded everything into my old Honda, the car I'd almost sold because Vanessa had said I didn't really need it, that I could just borrow hers when necessary. Thank God I'd kept it. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, looking at the house. A nice house in a nice neighborhood in Norfolk. A house I'd helped them buy. Actually, I'd given David $15,000 from the sale of my home as a down payment gift. Vanessa had picked out all the furniture. There was nothing of me in that house. There never had been. I drove away. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved, you know exactly how I felt in that moment. It's not just pain. It's a fundamental shift in how you see the world. It's realizing that the ground you thought was solid beneath your feet was actually paper-thin all along. I drove for an hour before I pulled into a hotel parking lot. A Holiday Inn off the interstate. I checked in, hauled my suitcases to a room on the 3rd floor, and finally, I let myself cry. I cried for the mother I'd been, for the sacrifices I'd made, for the son who'd let someone call me dead weight and said nothing. I cried for the pot roast getting cold on the dining room table, for the ironed napkins, for every small humiliation I'd swallowed to make myself acceptable in their home. And then, sometime around midnight, I stopped crying. I washed my face. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, an old woman with grey hair and tired eyes and good bone structure my mother had passed down to me. I looked at her and I said out loud, "You are not dead weight. You are not a burden. And you are sure as hell not done yet." That was the night Eleanor, the accommodating mother, died. And something else was born. Something harder, sharper, hungrier. I just didn't know yet how hungry I could be. I spent 3 days in that Holiday Inn, eating vending machine crackers and trying to figure out what came next. I had maybe $8,000 in savings. Social Security gave me $1,400 a month. I could find a cheap apartment, probably. Live small. Live quiet. Fade away gracefully like old women are supposed to do. But every time I started looking at rental listings, I'd remember Vanessa's voice. Dead weight. I'd remember David's silence. And I'd close my laptop, chest tight with anger I didn't know what to do with. On the 4th morning, I was going through some papers in my suitcase, old documents I'd grabbed from my desk drawer before leaving, when I found an envelope I'd forgotten about. The return address was from a law firm in Charleston, South Carolina. Rutledge and Associates. I opened it, confused. Inside was a letter dated 6 months earlier, forwarded from my old Richmond address to David's house. I vaguely remembered it arriving, remembered setting it aside during one of those first chaotic weeks of living with them, meaning to read it later. I never had. Dear Mrs. Eleanor Patricia Grayson we are writing to inform you that you have been named as a beneficiary in the estate of Miss Constance Mary Hartwell, who passed away on April 3rd. Miss Hartwell was your late mother's cousin, and she left specific provisions for you in her will. My breath caught. Constance Hartwell. I hadn't thought about her in years. She was my mother's second cousin, actually, a woman I'd met maybe 3 times in my entire life at family funerals and one memorable Thanksgiving when I was 16. She'd been ancient even then, or so she'd seemed to my teenage self. Probably only in her 60s. She'd never married, never had children. She'd been a professor, I remembered. Something with history. She'd lived in Charleston in an old house that smelled like books and lemon furniture polish. I remembered her as sharp-tongued but kind, the type who'd slip you a $20 bill and tell you not to let your mother spend it on practical things. The letter continued. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience to discuss the details of your inheritance and to arrange for the necessary documentation. We can be reached at the number below. We have attempted to reach you at previously listed addresses and phone numbers without success. There was a phone number. I stared at it for a long moment. An inheritance. From a woman I barely knew. It seemed impossible, like something from a movie, but the letterhead looked legitimate, and there was a reference number and everything. I called. A receptionist answered, pleasant and professional. I explained who I was, gave the reference number, and was transferred to an attorney named Patricia Rutledge. She sounded older, maybe in her 60s, with a low voice and a thick Charleston accent that turned vowels into warm molasses. Mrs. Grayson, she said when she came on the line. We've been trying to reach you for quite some time. I'm sorry, I said. I moved, and the letter got lost in the shuffle. Can you tell me what this is about? Of course. Miss Hartwell passed away last April at the age of 93. She left a very clear will. To you, she's bequeathed her property in Charleston, the house on Trad Street, along with its contents, and a monetary sum of approximately $470,000 after estate taxes. I actually dropped the phone. Just dropped it right on the hotel bed. I heard Patricia Rutledge's tinny voice saying hello, Mrs. Grayson, and I scrambled to pick it back up. I'm here, I said, my voice shaking. Did you say $470,000? Yes, And the house. The property itself is valued at approximately $1.2 million, though of course property values fluctuate. Miss Hartwell was quite clear in her will that she wanted you to have it. She said. There was a rustling of papers. She said, and I quote, Eleanor is the only family member who ever looked at me like I was interesting rather than just odd. Give her the house and tell her to live in it, sell it, or burn it down, whatever makes her happy. I started crying. Just completely broke down, sitting on that hotel bed in my pajamas at 10 in the morning, crying into the phone while a lawyer in Charleston waited patiently on the other end. I'm sorry, I managed. I'm sorry, this is just. I had no idea. I didn't even know she remembered me. Constance remembered everyone, Patricia Rutledge said gently. She was sharp as a tack until the very end. She left very specific instructions for several people. You were the largest beneficiary. She wanted you to have security, independence. Those were her words. Security. Independence. The two things Vanessa had accused me of leeching from her and David. I wiped my eyes. What do I need to do? We talked for another 20 minutes. There was paperwork, of course. Documents to sign. I'd need to come to Charleston to finalize everything, to see the house, to meet with the bank about the funds. Patricia said she could hold off creditors and estate taxes for another few months while I got things sorted, but the sooner I came, the better. I told her I'd be there within the week. When I hung up, I sat very still for a long time, trying to process what had just happened. I'd gone from having $8,000 and no home to having nearly $500,000 in cash and a house in Charleston worth over $1 million. I pulled out my laptop and looked up the address. Trad Street. I found it on Google Maps, then switched to Street View. The house took my breath away. It was a classic Charleston single house, 3 stories tall, painted a soft butter yellow with black shutters and a wide piazza, what they call porches down there, wrapping around the side. It sat behind a wrought iron fence with a garden that looked overgrown but beautiful in a wild kind of way. Magnolia trees. Climbing roses. Brick pathways disappearing into green shade. I zoomed in, looking at every detail. The house had probably been built in the 1800s. It had those tall windows with wavy old glass, a slate roof, a front door painted glossy black with a brass knocker. It was the kind of house you see in magazines about Southern architecture, the kind tourists take pictures of. And it was mine. I thought about calling David. Telling him. Part of me wanted to hear his voice, wanted him to be happy for me, to apologize, to say he'd made a mistake. But I remembered his silence in that living room. I remembered him watching me pack, watching me leave, not saying a word. Instead, I opened a new browser window and started researching Charleston. The city. The neighborhoods. The history. I read about Trad Street, about how it was one of the oldest streets in the city, how the houses there dated back to before the American Revolution. I read about the College of Charleston, about the art galleries on Broad Street, about the restaurants and the harbor and the historic district. I read until my eyes hurt, until I'd filled pages of a hotel notepad with notes and questions and plans. And somewhere in those hours of research, something crystallized in my mind. I wasn't just going to Charleston to sign papers and collect an inheritance. I was going there to start over. To build something. To prove that I wasn't dead weight, that I had value beyond what I could cook or clean or make myself small enough to fit into someone else's life. I was 71 years old. Most people would say that's too old to start fresh. But I'd spent the last 8 months, hell, the last several years, making myself smaller and smaller to fit into spaces that didn't want me. I'd forgotten what it felt like to take up room, to claim space, to matter. Constance Hartwell, a woman I barely knew, had given me that chance. She'd looked at me across decades and family trees and decided I was worth investing in. Worth remembering. Worth saving. I wasn't going to waste it. The next morning, I checked out of the Holiday Inn. I didn't have much of a plan yet beyond getting to Charleston, but I had enough. I loaded my suitcases into my Honda, programmed the GPS, and started driving south. I didn't call David. I didn't leave a note. I just disappeared from Norfolk as quietly as I'd left that house, carrying everything I owned and nothing I didn't. The drive took about 6 hours. I stopped once for gas and a bathroom break, once for a drive-through lunch that I ate in a parking lot while watching seagulls fight over French fries. The highway stretched out ahead of me, and with every mile, I felt something loosening in my chest. Like I'd been holding my breath for months and could finally exhale. I crossed into South Carolina in the late afternoon. The landscape changed, more pine trees, more Spanish moss hanging from branches like gray ghosts. The air even felt different when I rolled down the windows, thick and warm and slightly salty. By the time I reached Charleston, the sun was setting, painting everything gold and pink. I followed the GPS into the historic district, the streets narrowing, the houses getting older and more beautiful. And then I turned onto Trad Street and there it was. My house. I parked on the street, just sat in my car staring at it. It looked even better in person than it had on Google Maps. The yellow paint glowed in the evening light. The garden was overgrown, yes, but in a romantic way, like something from a fairy tale. A magnolia tree dominated the front yard, its dark leaves glossy and its white flowers just starting to bloom, perfuming the air. I got out slowly, my legs stiff from driving. There was a 4-estate settlement sign on the fence, and a lockbox on the gate. Patricia Rutledge had given me the code over the phone. I punched it in with shaking fingers, heard the click, pushed open the gate. The brick pathway was uneven, heaved up by tree roots. I walked it carefully, trailing my hand along the wrought iron fence. The garden was wild, roses climbing up trellises, herbs gone to seed, a cracked birdbath covered in moss. But it was beautiful. It was real. It was mine. The front door was massive, the kind that probably weighed 100 pounds. I tried the lockbox code on it, turned the handle, and pushed. The door swung open with a creak that probably hadn't been oiled in decades, and I stepped inside. The house smelled like dust and old paper and something faintly floral, like dried lavender. The entry hall was narrow, with heart pine floors worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. There was a staircase with a carved banister leading up into darkness. Doorways opened to the left and right, a formal parlor, a library, a dining room beyond that. I walked through slowly, turning on lights where they worked. Much of the furniture was still there, covered in white sheets like ghosts. The library made me catch my breath, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, all of them full. Thousands of books. History, literature, philosophy, poetry. A ladder on rails to reach the high shelves. A reading chair by the window that looked out onto the garden. I stood in that library and I cried again, but this time it wasn't from pain. It was from relief. From possibility. From the overwhelming sense that I'd been given a gift I hadn't earned but desperately needed. Constance Hartwell, wherever you are, thank you. Thank you for remembering me. Thank you for seeing something in a 16-year-old girl at a Thanksgiving dinner worth saving 55 years later. I spent the night there, in that house, on a sheet-covered sofa in the library, wrapped in my mother's quilt. I didn't have electricity figured out yet, didn't have water properly running. But I had a roof over my head and a fortune in the bank and a future that was mine to shape. And as I drifted off to sleep, I thought about David and Vanessa in their Norfolk house. I thought about how small they tried to make me. How forgettable. How disposable. They had no idea what was coming. Neither did I, really. But I was beginning to get an idea. The first month in Charleston was chaos. Beautiful, exhausting, transformative chaos. I met with Patricia Rutledge in person. She was exactly as I'd pictured her, silver-haired and elegant, wearing pearls and a navy dress that probably cost more than my car. We signed papers, transferred funds, dealt with the Byzantine world of estate law. The money hit my bank account on a Tuesday, and I sat in a Starbucks staring at my banking app, watching those numbers that didn't seem real. $473,691.42. I'd never seen that much money in my life. Not even close. I'd spent decades living paycheck to paycheck, making sure David had what he needed, saving tiny amounts when I could. And now this. The house needed work. A lot of work. The electrical system was outdated. The plumbing wheezed and groaned. The roof had some missing slates. The paint was peeling in places, and several windows had cracked panes. But the bones were good, solid, historic, beautiful bones that just needed attention. I hired contractors. I spent weeks getting quotes, comparing prices, learning more about historic home restoration than I ever thought I'd know. I learned about lime mortar and heart pine restoration and how to clean centuries-old brick without damaging it. I learned that in Charleston, you don't just renovate, you restore, you preserve, you honor the history. It cost money. A lot of money. But I had it, and I was spending it on something that was mine. While the work was being done, I started exploring the city. Charleston is small enough to walk, and I walked everywhere. I discovered coffee shops tucked into old carriage houses, bookstores with cats sleeping in the windows, galleries showing local art. I found the market where vendors sold sweetgrass baskets woven in patterns passed down for generations. I watched the sunset over the harbor, pelicans diving for fish while ghost tours led groups past. And I started to notice something. Tourists. Everywhere. Charleston draws millions of them every year, all wanting to see the historic homes, to walk the cobblestone streets, to experience Southern charm and history and beauty. An idea started forming. Slowly at first, then faster. I'd been a teacher for 40 years. I knew how to talk to people, how to make information interesting, how to hold attention. And I had this house, this incredible, historic, beautiful house in one of the most desirable neighborhoods in the city. What if I didn't just restore it? What if I made it into something more? I spent hours in the library, my library now, researching the house's history. I found records at the Charleston County Public Library, old photographs, newspaper clippings. The house had been built in 1803 by a shipping merchant named Thomas Beaumont. It had survived the Civil War, the 1886 earthquake, Hurricane Hugo in 1989. Generations of families had lived within these walls, loved within them, died within them. Their stories were fascinating. I found letters in the attic, actual letters, bundled in ribbon, written in careful cursive on yellowed paper. Love letters, business letters, letters from soldiers during the Civil War. I found photographs, daguerreotypes showing serious-faced people in Victorian dress standing in front of the house. I found a christening gown wrapped in tissue paper, baby shoes, a locket with hair braided inside. Constance Hartwell had been a collector, a historian in her own right. She'd saved all of it, preserved it. And now it was mine to steward. I hired a business consultant, a woman named Joyce who'd helped several Charleston bed and breakfasts get off the ground. We met at a coffee shop on King Street, and I laid out my idea. I want to turn the house into a historic venue, I told her. Tours. Maybe. But more than that. I want it to be a space for events, intimate weddings, book clubs, lectures, art shows. Something that brings people in but respects the history. Something authentic. Joyce looked at my notes, at the photographs I'd brought, at the research I'd compiled. Then she looked at me, this old woman in a cardigan with grey hair, and I saw the moment she decided I was serious. "How much are you willing to invest?" she asked. I told her. Her eyebrows went up. "That'll work," she said. We spent the next 3 months turning my idea into reality. Joyce introduced me to people, insurance agents who specialized in historic properties, web designers, photographers, marketing consultants. I learned about LLC formation, about business licenses and health permits and liability insurance. I learned about SEO and social media and how to write compelling copy. I threw myself into it with an intensity that surprised me. I'd spent so long being careful, being small, being accommodating. This was different. This was me saying, here I am, here's what I'm building, take it or leave it. We named it Hartwell House, after Constance. I hired a photographer who spent days capturing every corner of the property. The library with afternoon light slanting through the windows, the garden with its wild roses, the piazza with its rocking chairs and harbor views. The photos were stunning. I created a website. I wrote the copy myself, channeling every skill I'd learned in 40 years of teaching. I told the story of the house, of the families who'd lived there, of the history contained within its walls. I made it personal, compelling, real. I set up social media accounts and started posting. Historic details. Restoration progress. Stories from the house's past. On this day in 1863, Captain James Hartwell wrote a letter to his wife from this very library. Here's what he said. Posts like that. Personal. Historical. Human. The response was immediate. People loved it. Followers grew. Comments poured in. This is amazing. Can we visit? Do you do tours? Yes, I thought. Yes, we do tours. I trained myself as a guide. I memorized the history, the details, the stories. I practiced pacing, timing, how to hold a group's attention. I bought appropriate clothes, simple, elegant dresses in dark colors that looked professional but not stuffy. I got business cards printed. I arranged the house to be tour-ready while still maintaining its lived-in authenticity. And then, 6 months after I'd arrived in Charleston with nothing but 2 suitcases and a broken heart, I opened Hartwell House to the public. The first tour was small, just 8 people, booked through the website. I was nervous, hands shaking as I welcomed them at the door. But the moment I started talking, it all clicked. This was teaching. This was storytelling. This was everything I'd always been good at, just in a different context. They loved it. Loved the house, loved the stories, loved the personal touches, the letters I shared, the photographs, the sense that they were glimpsing real history, not a museum. They left glowing reviews. They told their friends. They posted photos on social media. Word spread. I started offering different types of tours, general history tours, garden tours, literary tours focused on the library. I partnered with other Charleston historic sites, with hotels, with tour companies. I trained 2 other guides to help when bookings got heavy. I raised my prices and people kept coming. Then I started hosting events. Small weddings in the garden, no more than 30 people. Book club meetings in the library. Wine tastings on the piazza. Historical lectures by College of Charleston professors. Each event was intimate, personal, special. People weren't just renting space, they were buying into the story, the history, the magic of the place. The money started rolling in. Real money. Money from tours, from events, from corporate bookings and private parties. I reinvested it, better landscaping, more restoration, hiring staff, marketing. The business grew. Within a year, Hartwell House was profitable. Within 2 years, it was thriving. Articles were written about it in Charleston Magazine, in Southern Living. A travel blogger with a huge following came through and posted a glowing review. Bookings exploded. I hired an event coordinator, a marketing manager, a part-time gardener. I paid them well, treated them with respect. We became a team, a family of sorts. I loved coming to work, because it was work, real work, meaningful work. Not cooking pot roasts that no one would eat. Not making myself small in someone else's space. I bought better furniture, commissioned local artists to create pieces for the house. I expanded the garden, adding a small fountain, restoring the old greenhouse. I created a gift shop in what had been a storage room, selling books about Charleston history, locally made sweetgrass baskets, art prints of the house. Every dollar I made felt like proof. Proof that I wasn't dead weight. Proof that I had value, skill, worth beyond what anyone had told me I was. And through all of it, through the tours and the events and the business growth, I didn't contact David. Not once. He didn't know where I was, what I was doing. As far as he knew, I'd found some cheap apartment somewhere and was living on Social Security. Let him think that. Let them both think that. I did, however, start an Instagram account. Not under my name, under the business name. But I was in some of the photos. Behind-the-scenes shots, me arranging flowers in the library, me greeting guests, me smiling in the garden. My face was visible. If anyone looked, they could find me. I wanted David to find me eventually. Just not yet. Not until I was ready. Not until I had built something so undeniable, so successful, so impressive that he'd have to reckon with what he'd lost. What he'd thrown away. What he'd called dead weight. Check the description box below if you want to hear more stories about people who turned their pain into power. There are so many ways to rebuild yourself. This is just one of them. By the end of year 3, Hartwell House was bringing in close to $400,000 a year in revenue. My personal salary was comfortable, not extravagant, but solid. The business was valued at over $2 million. The property itself had appreciated. I'd gone from broke and homeless to financially secure and respected in my community. I served on the board of the historic Charleston Foundation. I was interviewed for a documentary about historic preservation. I made friends, real friends, people who valued me for who I was, not what I could do for them. I was happy. Genuinely happy. Busy and challenged and engaged with life in a way I hadn't been in decades. And then, on a Tuesday morning in April, 4 years after I'd left Norfolk, I got a message on the Hartwell House Instagram account. It was from Vanessa. I was in the garden when I saw the notification. We'd just finished a morning tour, a group of 12 from a convention in town, lovely people who'd asked smart questions and taken dozens of photos. I was deadheading roses, something I'd come to love doing myself even though we had a gardener. There was something meditative about it, therapeutic. My phone buzzed. I almost ignored it. I'd learned to set boundaries with work notifications, to let my staff handle most things. But something made me look. A DM on the Hartwell House Instagram account from a user named @Vanessa Collins Realty. My stomach dropped. I knew that name. I knew that account. My hands were shaking as I opened the message. *Eleanor? Is this you? I saw your photo on this account. We've been trying to find you. David has been worried sick. Please call us. We need to talk to you about something important. I sat down hard on the garden bench, the one we'd placed beneath the magnolia tree. The sun was warm on my face, but I felt cold. 4 years. 4 years of silence, of building, of becoming someone new. And now this. I didn't respond. Not right away. I needed to think. That evening, I sat in the library with a glass of wine, something I'd learned to enjoy, good wine sipped slowly while reading or just thinking. I looked at Vanessa's message again. Read it probably 20 times, parsing each word. We've been trying to find you. Why? Why now, after 4 years? David has been worried sick. Had he been? Or was that just something you say? Something important? What could possibly be important enough to reach out after all this time? I did what I probably shouldn't have done. I went to Vanessa's real estate Instagram account. It was public, professional, full of listings and sold signs and her posing in front of luxury properties. She looked the same, blonde highlights, bright smile, expensive clothes. But as I scrolled, I noticed something. The posts had changed tone about a year ago. Less frequent. More generic. The comments were full of spam and bot accounts, not real engagement. Her last post was from 3 weeks ago, a listing for a modest townhouse in a neighborhood that definitely wasn't luxury. I switched to Facebook, found her there too. Her profile was semi-private, but I could see enough. She and David still lived in the same house in Norfolk. There were photos of them at dinners, on a beach vacation, at what looked like a charity event. They looked happy, successful. But something felt off. I couldn't name it, just a sense that the polish was a little too bright, the smiles a little too forced. I closed my laptop. I wasn't ready to respond. Not yet. The next day, another message came. *Mom, yes, it's me, David. Vanessa gave me the login. Please, we really need to talk to you. Can you call me? My number is still the same. Mom. He'd called me Mom. After 4 years of silence, after watching me pack and leave, after letting his wife call me dead weight, now he called me Mom. I felt angry. I felt vindicated. I felt curious despite myself. I called Joyce, my business consultant who'd become a close friend. We met for lunch at a cafe on Meeting Street, and I showed her the messages. What do you think they want? She asked, sipping her sweet tea. I have no idea. Money. Maybe, though they don't know I have any. Do you want to respond? I thought about that. Did I? Part of me wanted to ignore them completely, to let them wonder, to give them the same silence they'd given me. But another part, the part that remembered labor pains and first steps and teaching him to read, that part wanted to know what was so important that it had broken 4 years of silence. I don't know, I admitted. What would you do? Joyce studied me with her sharp lawyer eyes. I'd protect yourself first. Don't tell them anything you don't want them to know. Don't make promises. Don't let them back into your life unless you're absolutely sure you want them there. You've built something beautiful here, Eleanor. Don't let them take that from you. That night, I responded. Just to David, not Vanessa. I sent him a private message from my personal Facebook account, which I rarely used. *David. I got your message. I'm fine. I'm in Charleston. What do you need to talk about? His response came within minutes. He'd been waiting. Mom. Thank God. Can I call you? Please? I know it's been a long time and I know we hurt you. But something's happened and I really need your help. Please. I stared at that message for a long time. I really need your help. Not I'm sorry. Not I was wrong. Just I need your help. Some things never change. But I was curious. I couldn't help it. I called him. He answered on the first ring. Mom. His voice hit me like a physical thing. My son. My boy. Older now, maybe a little rougher, but still him. Hi, David, I said, and my voice was steadier than I expected. Oh my God, Mom. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. We've been trying to find you for over a year. You just disappeared. I didn't know if you were okay, if something had happened. I'm fine, I said. I've been fine. What do you need, David? There was a pause. I could hear him breathing, could imagine him running his hand through his hair the way he always did when he was stressed. It's complicated. Can I come see you? Can I come to Charleston? I need to talk to you in person. Why? Because. Another pause. Because Vanessa and I are getting divorced. And because. Mom, I've made such a mess of everything. I need help. I need advice. I need my mother. Divorced. They were getting divorced. I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. When do you want to come? I asked. This weekend? I can drive down Friday evening, if that works for you. I'll get a hotel, I won't impose. You can stay here, I heard myself say. I have space. Where's here? Are you in an apartment or? I'll text you the address, I said. Drive safely, David. I hung up before he could say more. I texted him the address of Hartwell House. Nothing else. Let him figure it out when he got here. The next 3 days were strange. I went through my normal routines, tours, meetings, events, but my mind was elsewhere. I kept imagining David's face when he saw the house, when he realized what I'd built. I kept rehearsing conversations in my head, things I'd say, ways I'd hold my boundaries. Joyce made me promise I'd be careful. He's your son and you love him, but that doesn't mean you owe him anything, she said. Remember that. I remembered. Friday evening came. I'd scheduled no tours, no events. I sent the staff home early. I wanted privacy for whatever this conversation was going to be. 6 o'clock. 6:30. 7. I was beginning to think he wasn't coming when I heard a car pull up outside. I was in the library, pretending to read but really just staring at the same page over and over. The doorbell rang. That beautiful old doorbell that echoed through the house like church bells. I stood, smoothed my dress, a simple navy sheath I'd bought at a boutique on King Street, and walked to the door. Took a breath. Opened it. David stood there, and for a moment I forgot everything. He looked older. Thinner. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before, grey threading through his dark hair. He was wearing jeans and a button-down shirt, carrying a duffel bag. But what struck me most was his expression when he looked past me into the house. His mouth literally fell open. What? Where? Mom, where are we? This is my home, I said simply. Come in. He stepped inside, slowly, looking around like he'd stepped into another dimension. This is your house? This is yours. Yes. But how? When did you? I don't understand. I led him into the library. His eyes went wide at the books, the furniture, the sheer elegance of it. Sit down, David. I'll make coffee and then we can talk. I left him there, went to the kitchen, my beautiful restored kitchen with its marble counters and commercial-grade appliances, and made coffee with shaking hands. When I returned, he was standing at the window, looking out at the garden, now lit with the soft landscape lighting we'd installed. I set down the coffee tray. Sit, I said again, and this time he did. I sat across from him, in my favorite chair, and waited. Mom, he finally said, I don't even know where to start. This house, are you renting it? How can you afford? I'm not renting it. I own it. It was left to me by Constance Hartwell, my mother's cousin. She died about 4 years ago and left me this house and a substantial sum of money. I turned the house into a historic venue and event space. It's a successful business. I'm doing very well. He stared at me. 4 years ago? You mean, right after you left? Right after you told me to leave, yes. He flinched. Mom, I never told you to leave. You watched Vanessa tell me I was a burden, that I was dead weight, and you said nothing, David. Nothing. So yes, you did tell me to leave. Maybe not with words, but with your silence. He put his head in his hands. I know. God, I know. I've replayed that night 1,000 times. I was a coward. I was so wrong. Vanessa was wrong. What she said was unforgivable. Yes, it was. We sat in silence for a moment. I sipped my coffee, let him sit with his guilt. When did you know about the inheritance? He finally asked. I found the letter a few days after I left. It had been forwarded to your house months earlier, but I'd never opened it. I called the lawyer, came to Charleston, and started over. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you call and let me know you were okay? I looked at him steadily. Why would I? You made it very clear I wasn't wanted. That I was in the way of your life, your marriage, your future. So I built my own life. One where I wasn't a burden to anyone. You were never a burden, he said, and his voice cracked. Mom, you were never a burden. I was just. Vanessa kept saying we needed space, that we couldn't start a family with you there, that you were too dependent. And I listened to her. I let her convince me that asking you to find your own place was the right thing to do. But the way she said it, the way I let her say it to you. Mom, I've regretted it every single day. Have you? I asked. Because you didn't seem to regret it enough to reach out. Not for 4 years. I tried. After you left, after I realized what I'd done, I tried calling you. Your number was disconnected. I went to your old house in Richmond. The new owners had no idea where you'd gone. I filed a missing person report, but you're an adult, you'd left of your own free will, so the police couldn't do anything. I searched online, I hired a private investigator at one point, but you'd just vanished. I hadn't known that. Hadn't expected it, actually. You hired a private investigator. Yes. About a year after you left. He couldn't find you. You don't have social media under your own name, you don't have a phone listed, you don't have credit cards that showed up anywhere. It was like you'd become a ghost. I had become a ghost, in a way. I'd left Eleanor Grayson, the accommodating mother, behind and became Eleanor Grayson, business owner and independent woman. I'd been careful about my digital footprint, about keeping my personal life separate from the business. Why now? I asked. Why did you find me now? Vanessa saw one of your Instagram posts. Hartwell House came up in her feed somehow, probably because she still follows Charleston real estate accounts. She saw a photo of you in the garden, recognized you, and showed me. That was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks. They'd known where I was for 2 weeks and were only now reaching out. You said you're getting divorced, I said. His face crumpled. Yes. It's been. God, Mom, it's been falling apart for 2 years. Maybe longer. We never did have kids. She kept saying she wasn't ready, then said she wanted to focus on her career, then just stopped talking about it. Her real estate business started struggling. She became more and more bitter, more controlling. We fought constantly. About money, about her work, about my work, about everything. I listened, watching my son fall apart in my library, and felt a complicated mix of satisfaction and sorrow. She had an affair, he continued. About a year ago. With a client. A wealthy one. I found out 6 months ago. Confronted her. She said it was my fault, that I wasn't ambitious enough, that I'd held her back. We've been in this terrible limbo ever since, living in the same house but barely speaking. The divorce will be final next month. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. Not sorry that his marriage had failed, I'd never liked Vanessa, had never thought she was right for him, but sorry that he was hurting. The house is being sold, he said. We can't afford to keep it. We're underwater on the mortgage. We borrowed against it a few years ago when her business was slow. Everything's a mess. I'm going to have to find an apartment, start over. And I just... He looked up at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. I just kept thinking about you. About how you started over. About how strong you must have been to do that at your age, alone, after what we did to you. And I needed to see you. To apologize in person. To tell you that I know I failed you. If you've ever wanted someone to apologize and then felt empty when they finally did, you understand what I felt in that moment. It should have been enough. It should have fixed something. But it didn't. Apology noted, I said quietly. Is that all? He asked. Is that all you can say? What do you want me to say, David? That it's okay? It's not okay. You let your wife call me dead weight and you said nothing. You watched me pack up my life and leave and you did nothing. For 4 years, I've had to rebuild myself from nothing. Except it turned out I didn't have nothing, I had everything I needed inside me all along. But I had to learn that alone. Without my son. Without anyone. I know. Do you? Do you really understand what you took from me? Not just a place to live. I was paying rent, I was contributing. You took my dignity. My sense of worth. My belief that I mattered to anyone. Mom. And now you come here, to the life I built without you, and you want what? Forgiveness? Absolution? Help with your divorce? He was crying now, openly. I want my mother back. I want to make things right. I want. He took a shaky breath. I want to know if there's any chance you can forgive me. Someday. Not today, maybe not for a long time. But someday. I looked at this man, my son, crying in my beautiful library in my beautiful house. I thought about the boy he'd been, the man I'd hoped he'd become, the man he'd actually turned out to be. Weak in some ways, yes. Easily influenced. But not cruel. Not intentionally hurtful. Just human. Flawed. Broken. Like all of us. I don't know, I said honestly. I don't know if I can forgive you yet. Maybe someday. But not today. He nodded, wiping his eyes. That's fair. That's more than fair. We sat in silence for a long moment. Outside, I could hear the fountain in the garden, the soft splash of water. Somewhere nearby, a church bell rang the hour. You can stay the weekend, I finally said. I have a guest room. But David, I need you to understand something. I'm not the mother you remember. I'm not the woman who lived in your house and made pot roasts and tried to be small enough not to bother anyone. That woman is gone. The woman sitting here now owns a successful business, has her own life, makes her own decisions. If you want any kind of relationship with me going forward, it has to be on equal terms. Do you understand? Yes, he said. Yes, I understand. I stood. Come on. I'll show you to your room. I led him upstairs, to one of the guest bedrooms I'd restored. It was beautiful, antique bed with a handmade quilt, windows overlooking the garden, its own bathroom. He set down his duffel bag and looked around in amazement. Mom, this whole place is incredible. What you've built here. Thank you. Can I see the rest tomorrow? Can you tell me about it? I hesitated, then nodded. Tomorrow. Tonight. I'm tired. Sleep well, David. I left him there and went to my own room, the master bedroom on the 3rd floor, with its harbor views and its peace. I got ready for bed, went through my usual routine, and lay down in the darkness. And despite everything, despite the anger and the hurt and the complicated tangle of emotions, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not yet. But maybe the beginning of it. Maybe the first small crack in the wall I'd built around my heart. Maybe. I woke early, the way I always did. Sunrise was my favorite time, the light soft and golden, the city still quiet, the garden coming to life with birdsong. I made coffee, sat on the piazza in my robe, and watched the world wake up. David found me there around 8. He looked rough, eyes puffy, hair messy, wearing rumpled pajama pants and a t-shirt. Morning, he said quietly. Coffee's in the kitchen, I told him. Help yourself. He did, returning a few minutes later with a mug. He sat in the rocking chair next to mine, both of us looking out at the garden, not speaking. It was surprisingly comfortable, that silence. Or maybe I was just too old to fill every quiet moment with words. I forgot how peaceful mornings could be, he finally said. Vanessa was always on her phone first thing, checking her listings, answering messages. There was never just quiet. I didn't respond to that. Wasn't my place to comment on his marriage. Will you show me around today? He asked. Show me what you've built. I considered. I had no tours scheduled, it was Saturday, and we only did tours on weekends by special appointment. My staff wasn't coming in. It would just be us. All right, I said. After breakfast. I made eggs and toast in my beautiful kitchen, moving through the routine I'd perfected. David watched me, and I could feel his eyes on me, could sense him trying to reconcile this version of his mother with the woman he remembered. "You seem different," he said as we ate at the kitchen table, a farmhouse table I'd found at an antique shop and had refinished. "More confident. Happier." "I am happier." Confidence came with proving to myself that I could do hard things. "Did you ever doubt you could?" I looked at him. "David, when your wife calls you dead weight and your son says nothing, yes. You doubt yourself. You doubt everything." He flinched again. Good. He should flinch. He should feel it. After breakfast, I showed him the house. Room by room, I told him what I'd done, the electrical work, the plumbing upgrades, the careful restoration of original features. I showed him the library with its thousands of books, the parlor where we hosted small events, the dining room that could seat 20. I showed him the upstairs bedrooms, each one carefully decorated in period-appropriate style but with modern comforts. He was quiet, taking it all in. When we reached the third floor, my private space, I hesitated, then showed him anyway. My bedroom, my office, my own small sitting room where I could retreat. "It's like a museum," he said. "But one where people actually live." That's exactly what I wanted. History that's alive, that matters, that people can connect with. We went outside, walked through the garden. I showed him the greenhouse I'd restored, now full of herbs and flowering plants. The fountain I'd installed. The seating areas tucked into corners. The gate that led to a small courtyard perfect for intimate ceremonies. "How many weddings have you done?" he asked. "Maybe 40 in the last 3 years. Small ones. I cap them at 30 guests. It's not about volume, it's about quality, about making each event special." "And tours?" "Hundreds. We do 3 or 4 a week, sometimes more during peak tourist season. Plus special events, lectures, book clubs, private parties." "Mom, you've built something incredible. Do you know that?" I did know that. But hearing him say it still felt good. We ended up back on the piazza, drinking sweet tea I'd made that morning. The sun was high now, the day warm but with a breeze from the harbor. Perfect Charleston weather. "Can I ask you something?" David said. "You can ask." "Why didn't you sell? When you inherited this place, when you saw what it was worth, why didn't you just sell it and live comfortably off the money? Why go through all the work of building a business?" I thought about that question. Because comfortable wasn't enough anymore. I'd been comfortable before, well, barely, but I'd been surviving. And surviving isn't living. I needed to prove something, not just to you or Vanessa, but to myself. I needed to know I could do more than just exist. I needed to matter. "You always mattered." "Not in your house, I didn't." We sat with that truth. It was harsh, but it was honest. "There's something else," David said after a long moment. "Something I need to tell you. Another reason I needed to see you." I turned to look at him. His face was pale, drawn. Whatever he was about to say, it was weighing on him. "What is it?" "Vanessa." He stopped, started again. "The reason Vanessa found you, the reason she's been so interested in reaching out, it's not because she cares about making amends. It's because she thinks you have money now. She saw this place, saw the business, and she thinks you might be able to help us. Help me. Financially." My blood went cold. "Excuse me." "She knows the divorce is leaving me with basically nothing. The house sale will barely cover our debts. I'll have to start over completely. And when she saw Hartwell House, saw what you'd built, she started saying things like maybe your mother could help and she owes us for those months she lived with us rent-free. Which is bullshit, I know you paid rent, but that's what she's saying." "I see." My voice was ice. I told her no. I told her absolutely not, that I wouldn't ask you for money, that we'd made our bed and we'd lie in it. But she. "Mom, I need to tell you something, and it's going to make you hate me even more." "Tell me." He took a shaky breath. "She's planning to come here. To Charleston. She's planning to show up and appeal to you directly. She thinks if she apologizes, if she cries and says how sorry she is, you'll help us out of guilt or obligation or something. She's planning to come this week." I stood up so fast my chair rocked. "She's what?" "I'm sorry. I told her not to. I told her to leave you alone, that we have no right to ask you for anything. But she's desperate. Her real estate career is basically dead, She's broke, and she thinks you're her way out. The audacity. The absolute gall. After 4 years of silence, after calling me dead weight, after humiliating me in front of my own son, she thought she could show up at my door and ask for money? I started laughing. I couldn't help it. It bubbled up from somewhere deep, this bitter, incredulous laugh that felt like it might never stop. Mom. David stood, concerned. Are you okay? Am I okay? I turned to him. David, do you understand how insane this is? How absolutely ridiculous. She called me a burden. She said I was dead weight. She pushed me out of your house, out of your life, and now she wants my help? She wants my money. I know it's crazy. That's why I came here first, to warn you. So you'd be prepared when she shows up. If she shows up, I corrected. She's not getting past that gate. I pointed to the wrought iron gate at the front of the property, the one with the security code, the camera I'd installed. She'll try. You don't know how persistent she can be when she wants something. Oh, I could imagine. I'd seen glimpses of it when I lived with them, the way she'd wear David down on decisions, the way she'd manipulate situations to get her way. I'd just never been on the receiving end of it. Until now. Let her try, I said. Let her come here and ring that bell. I'll tell her exactly what she can do with her apology. David looked worried. Mom, she can be vindictive when people don't give her what she wants. Please be careful. I'm not afraid of Vanessa. And I wasn't. What could she do to me? I owned this property outright. I had a successful business. I had friends, community, respect. I had built a life that was mine, that nobody could take from me. Let her come. Let her see what dead weight could build. That afternoon, David and I talked more. Really talked, for the first time in years. He told me about the slow dissolution of his marriage, about the fights and the cold silences, about watching Vanessa become someone he didn't recognize. He told me about his job, how he'd been passed over for a promotion, how the stress of his failing marriage had affected his work. He apologized again, in more detail this time. He owned his mistakes, his weakness, his failure to stand up for me. He didn't make excuses or try to shift blame. He just apologized. Fully. Honestly. It helped. Not all the way, not enough to erase 4 years of hurt. But it helped. I don't expect forgiveness right away, he said as the sun started to set, painting the garden in shades of gold and amber. I don't even know if I deserve it eventually. But I want to try. I want to be part of your life again, if you'll let me. Not the way it was before. I understand that woman is gone. But maybe we could build something new. As adults. As equals. I looked at my son, really looked at him. He'd aged in 4 years. Life had worn him down, humbled him. Maybe that was necessary. Maybe we all need to be broken down sometimes before we can be built back better. Maybe, I said. We'll see. That night, after David had gone to bed, I sat in my library with a glass of wine and thought about what was coming. Vanessa, showing up at my gate. Asking for help. Maybe demanding it. Part of me wanted to refuse to see her at all. But another part, the part that had learned to embrace conflict instead of avoid it, wanted to face her. Wanted to look her in the eye and show her exactly what she'd thrown away when she'd called me dead weight. I wanted her to see what I'd built. I wanted her to understand what she'd lost. And I wanted her to know that I didn't need her, didn't need David, didn't need anyone's permission or approval to be successful, valuable, worthy. I texted Joyce, Vanessa is coming to Charleston. Probably this week. She wants money. Her response came immediately. Oh hell no. Want me there when she shows up? I smiled at my phone. Maybe. I'll let you know. I went to bed that night feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Anticipation. Not dread, anticipation. Because I was ready for this. I'd been building toward this moment for 4 years without even knowing it. Let her come. Let her stand at my gate and see what dead weight looks like when it stops carrying anyone else's burden and starts carrying its own crown. This is the moment I'd been building toward, though I didn't know it then. This is where everything was about to change. Not just for me, not just for David. For all of us. But the reason Vanessa really came, the thing she wanted, the thing she needed, that was going to shock even me. And it would force me to decide what kind of woman I'd become. The kind who held grudges forever, or the kind who'd learned that true power isn't in revenge, it's in choosing who you want to be, regardless of what others have done. Stay with me. The real story is just beginning. She came on Tuesday. David had left Sunday afternoon, promising to stay in touch, asking tentatively if he could visit again sometime. I'd said maybe, we'd see, taking it one day at a time. He'd hugged me goodbye, awkward but sincere, and I'd watched him drive away with complicated feelings I was still trying to sort through. Monday, I'd gone back to my routine. Tours, meetings, emails. The normalcy of work helped settle me. I told my staff what might happen, warned them that if a blonde woman named Vanessa showed up causing trouble, they should call me immediately. Tuesday morning, I was in my office, the small room on the third floor with windows overlooking the harbor, when my phone rang. It was Marcus, my event coordinator. Wait, no, I said I wouldn't use that name. Let me restart this part. Tuesday morning, I was in my office when my phone rang. It was Thomas, my event coordinator. Eleanor, there's a woman at the gate. Says her name is Vanessa Collins, says she needs to speak with you. She's pretty insistent. My heart started pounding. What does she look like? Blonde, maybe mid-30s, wearing designer clothes. Looks like she's been crying. Of course she'd been crying. That was part of the strategy. Show up vulnerable, appeal to maternal instinct, manipulate through emotion. I taught English for 40 years. I knew every manipulation tactic in the book because I'd read them all in classic literature. Vanessa wasn't the first person to think tears and pretty words could move me. Tell her I'll be down in 10 minutes, I said. I took those 10 minutes deliberately. I changed out of my work clothes, casual pants and a blouse, into one of my nicer dresses. Navy blue, well-fitted, elegant. I fixed my hair, put on lipstick. The pearl earrings I'd bought myself last Christmas. I looked in the mirror and saw a successful businesswoman, not a discarded mother. I looked like someone who mattered. Then I walked downstairs, through my beautiful house, out into my garden, and down the brick path to the gate. Vanessa was standing on the other side, one hand on the wrought iron, the other clutching her purse. She was thinner than I remembered, her clothes expensive but slightly worn, her makeup perfect but unable to hide the dark circles under her eyes. When she saw me, her face crumpled. Eleanor. Oh God, Eleanor, thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. I stood on my side of the gate, not opening it. Let her stand on the street. Let her see the barrier between us. Vanessa. Can I come in? Can we talk? We can talk here. She glanced around at the street, at a couple walking by who'd slowed down to watch. Please. This is private. Can't we talk inside? No. That one word hit her like a slap. Her eyes widened. She was used to getting her way, I realized. Used to people accommodating her, letting her set the terms. Not anymore. Okay, she said, trying to recover. Okay, we can talk here. Eleanor, I came to apologize. For everything. For what I said to you, for how I treated you. It was wrong. It was so wrong, and I've regretted it every day since. Have you? It wasn't a question. Yes. God, yes. What I said to you that night, calling you a burden, dead weight, I don't even know why I said that. I was stressed about work, about money, and I took it out on you. But that's no excuse. You were nothing but kind to us, helpful, and I repaid that with cruelty. I'm so sorry. She was good, I'll give her that. The tears looked real. The remorse in her voice sounded genuine. If I hadn't known she wanted money, I might have believed her. Might have. David told me you were coming, I said. She blinked. He did. He came to see me this past weekend. He told me about the divorce, about your financial troubles, and about how you saw my house on Instagram and decided to come apologize. Her face flushed. That's not why I came. I mean, yes, I saw the house, and it's beautiful, and I'm so happy you're doing well. But I came to apologize because it was the right thing to do. Because I've been carrying this guilt for 4 years and I needed to make it right. 4 years, I repeated. You've been carrying this guilt for 4 years, but you only decided to make it right 2 weeks after discovering I own a valuable property and run a successful business. Interesting timing. Her mouth opened and closed. It's not like that. Isn't it? Tell me, Vanessa, if I was still living in some cheap apartment on Social Security, would you be standing here right now? She didn't answer. Couldn't answer. We both knew the truth. I stepped closer to the gate, close enough that she had to look directly at me. Let me tell you what I think. I think you're broke. I think your real estate career is failing, your marriage is over, and you're desperate. I think you saw what I've built and thought, there's my solution. You thought you could come here, cry a little, say the right words, and I'd feel obligated to help you out of some misplaced sense of family loyalty. No, she said, but her voice was weak. No, that's not. You called me dead weight, Vanessa. You told my son, your husband, that I was a burden, that you were babysitting me, that I was in the way of your future. And he said nothing. Do you have any idea what that felt like? To be 71 years old and hear someone young enough to be your daughter call you worthless while your own child stands silent. Tears were streaming down her face now. Real ones, I thought. Not manipulation, actual shame. I know it was horrible. I was horrible. Eleanor, please, I'm asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a second chance. A second chance at what? At being part of my life? At having access to what I've built? At making things right? You can't make this right, I said, and my voice was steel. You can apologize, and maybe someday I'll even accept that apology, but you can't undo what you did. You can't give me back those 4 years. You can't erase the humiliation, the pain, the nights I spent crying in a hotel room wondering what I'd done wrong to deserve being thrown away. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. We stood there, separated by iron and history and hurt. Part of me, the part that had been a mother, a teacher, a nurturer my whole life, wanted to comfort her. Wanted to say it was okay, to open the gate, to offer grace. But the part of me that had been called dead weight, that had rebuilt herself from nothing, that had learned her own worth, that part stood firm. What do you want, Vanessa? Really want? She wiped her eyes, took a shaky breath. And then she said it. I need help. David and I are drowning in debt. The house sale won't cover half of what we owe. I'm about to lose my real estate license because I can't afford the fees. I'm living in my car some nights because I can't even afford a decent apartment. And David. God, David's barely holding it together. He's going to have to declare bankruptcy. And you thought I'd solve all that for you? I thought maybe you'd be willing to help. A loan. Maybe. Something to help us get back on our feet. I'd pay you back, I swear. With what? You just said you're broke. She had no answer for that. I studied her, this woman who'd once had everything she wanted, who'd looked down on me, who'd pushed me out. Now she was the one standing on the outside, asking to be let in. The reversal was complete. The revenge fantasy I'd never consciously admitted to having was playing out before my eyes. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated, powerful. Instead, I felt tired. I'm not giving you money, I said quietly. Not a loan, not a gift, not anything. That's not going to happen. Her face crumpled. Please, Eleanor, we're desperate. You should have thought about that before you called me dead weight. I know, and I'm sorry. But please, if not for me, then for David. He's your son. He's struggling. Don't punish him because of what I did. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm simply choosing not to rescue people who pushed me away when I needed them. That's not punishment, that's boundaries. But he's your son. And I'm his mother. The mother he stood by and let you humiliate. The mother he watched pack up and leave without saying a single word in my defense. You want me to help him now? Where was he when I needed help? She had nothing to say to that. Nothing that would change my mind, anyway. I started to turn away, to walk back up that brick path to my house, my life, my peace. But something made me stop. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was something else. Vanessa, I said, turning back. Tell me something honest. Just one thing. Why did you really hate me so much? What did I actually do to you? She looked startled by the question. I didn't hate you. You called me dead weight. I know, but I didn't. It wasn't about you, not really. She wiped her eyes again, smearing mascara. It was about me. About feeling inadequate. You were this perfect mother who'd raised David alone, who'd sacrificed everything for him. And I could see how much he loved you, how much he respected you. And I felt like I could never measure up. Like I'd always be competing with you for his attention, his loyalty. I stared at her. So you decided to get rid of the competition? I guess so. God, that sounds even worse when you say it like that. It was worse. You turned your insecurity into cruelty and you aimed it at someone who was trying her best to stay out of your way. I know. We stood in silence. A car passed by, music thumping from its speakers. Somewhere nearby, children were laughing. Life going on, indifferent to our little drama. I'm sorry, Vanessa said again, her voice small. I know it doesn't fix anything. I know it's not enough. But I am genuinely sorry. I believed her. Finally, after all the manipulation attempts and the tears and the pleading, I believed this apology. It was too raw, too honest, too self-aware to be fake. But belief isn't the same as forgiveness. And forgiveness isn't the same as reconciliation. I accept your apology, I said. But I'm not giving you money, I'm not bailing you out of your problems, and I'm not letting you back into my life. You need to figure out your own way forward, just like I had to. I understand. She nodded, shoulders slumped in defeat. I understand. She turned to leave, and I watched her walk toward a car parked down the street. An older sedan, not the luxury SUV she used to drive. She was halfway there when she stopped, turned back. Eleanor, can I ask you something? What? How did you do it? How did you start over at your age, after everything? How did you find the strength? I thought about that question. It deserved a real answer. I stopped waiting for permission to matter, I said. I stopped trying to make myself small enough to fit into spaces that didn't want me. I started building my own space instead. That's how. She nodded slowly. Thank you. For seeing me today. For listening. For being honest. You're welcome. She walked to her car, got in, and drove away. I stood at the gate and watched her go, feeling a strange mix of emotions I couldn't quite name. Thomas came out of the house, walked down the path toward me. You okay, boss? I smiled at him. Yeah, I'm okay. That looked intense. It was. But it's done now. I walked back up the path, Thomas beside me, back to my beautiful house and my beautiful life. I felt lighter somehow, like I'd set down a weight I'd been carrying without realizing it. That night, I called David. He answered immediately. Mom? Did she come? Did Vanessa show up? She did. And I told her no. No money, no help, no reconciliation. I accepted her apology, but that's all. There was a long pause. How did she take it? Better than I expected. Actually, I think she understood. Another pause. Thank you. For what? For not completely destroying her. You could have. You would have been justified. But you didn't. I thought about that. He was right. I could have been cruel, could have twisted the knife, could have made her feel as small as she'd once made me feel. But what would that have proven? That I could be just as petty as she'd been. That revenge was more important than dignity. I'm not the same woman I was 4 years ago, I told him. But I'm also not the kind of woman who finds joy in other people's pain. Even when they deserve it. I'm proud of you, Mom. Those words hit me harder than I expected. When was the last time he'd said that? When was the last time anyone had? Thank you, I said quietly. Can I ask you something? Of course. When I get through this divorce, when I'm back on my feet, and I will get back on my feet, I promise you that, can I come visit again? Can we try to build something new? I thought about it. Really thought about it. My son had failed me in fundamental ways. He'd been weak when I needed him to be strong, silent when I needed him to speak. But he'd also apologized, sincerely and repeatedly. He'd warned me about Vanessa. He'd shown remorse. People make mistakes. Even big ones. Even ones that hurt deeply. The question wasn't whether he'd made mistakes. The question was whether he'd learned from them. Whether he was capable of being better. I thought maybe he was. Yes, I said. You can visit. We can try. I could hear the relief in his voice. Thank you, Mom. Thank you. After we hung up, I sat in my library with a glass of wine, looking at the books that surrounded me, the life I'd built, the woman I'd become. Vanessa had come begging, and I'd turned her away. Not out of cruelty, but out of self-preservation. Out of the hard-won knowledge that you can't save people who pushed you overboard, you can only swim to your own shore and build your own boat. But I'd also shown her grace. Not the grace of giving her what she wanted, but the grace of giving her truth. Of treating her like an adult capable of handling consequences. Of not destroying her when I could have. That felt right. That felt like power, not the petty power of revenge, but the real power of choosing who you want to be regardless of what others have done. And you know what? If you're reading this and you've been through something similar, if someone has made you feel small, worthless, like dead weight, I want you to know something. You're not. You're not what they said you were. You're not defined by their limitations, their insecurities, their cruelty. You're defined by what you do next. By how you rebuild. By who you choose to become. Check the description box below for more stories about people who rebuilt themselves after being torn down. You're not alone in this. None of us are. 3 weeks passed. Life returned to normal, or what passed for normal in my busy, beautiful life. Tours, events, the constant pleasant chaos of running a successful business. David and I texted occasionally, brief check-ins where he updated me on the divorce proceedings and I sent him pictures of the garden in bloom. I thought the Vanessa chapter was closed. I thought I'd turned a page. I was wrong. It was a Thursday afternoon in early May. I was in the garden with our gardener, William, discussing whether we should add another seating area for small outdoor ceremonies. The azaleas were at peak bloom, painting everything in shades of pink and white. The air smelled like jasmine and possibility. My phone rang. Unknown number with a Virginia area code. I almost didn't answer, probably spam, but something made me pick up. This is Eleanor. Mrs. Grayson. A woman's voice, professional, slightly strained. This is Jennifer Marsh. I'm a nurse at Centara Norfolk General Hospital. I'm calling about your son, David Grayson. My blood turned to ice. What happened? Is he okay? He's stable now, but he was brought in about 2 hours ago. He was in a car accident. His car was rear-ended on the interstate, the other driver was texting. Your son has a concussion, some bruised ribs, a broken wrist. He's going to be okay, but he needs someone. He listed you as his emergency contact. I was already moving toward the house, toward my car keys, my purse. I'm in Charleston. I can be there in 6 hours. Tell him I'm coming. Tell him. Mrs. Grayson, there's something else. The nurse's voice dropped lower. The reason we're calling is, your son doesn't have insurance right now. He lost his job 3 weeks ago, and his COBRA coverage hasn't kicked in yet. The hospital bills from this are going to be substantial. We need to discuss payment options, and he's in no condition to make those decisions right now. I stopped moving. He lost his job. Yes, that's what he told us. I'm sorry to be discussing this over the phone, but we need to know how the bills will be handled. My mind was racing. David had lost his job and hadn't told me. He was going through a divorce, had no insurance, and now he was injured and alone in a hospital. I'll handle it, I heard myself say. Whatever the bills are, I'll handle them. Just take care of my son. Thank you, Mrs. Grayson. Do you want to speak with him? He's awake, though he's pretty groggy from pain medication. Yes, please. There was rustling, muffled voices, then David's voice, thick and slow. Mom. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm here. What happened? Some idiot wasn't watching the road. Hit me from behind. Spun me around. Mom, the car's totaled. Everything's falling apart. He sounded like he was crying, or maybe that was just the pain medication. My heart broke for him, this man who was still my boy, still the child I'd rocked to sleep and taught to ride a bike and sent off to college with too many care packages. It's going to be okay, I said, and I meant it. I'm coming. I'm getting in the car right now. I'll be there by tonight. You're not alone, David. You hear me? You're not alone. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I didn't tell you about the job because I didn't want you to worry. I didn't want you to think I was trying to manipulate you into helping me. But now everything's a mess and I don't know what to do, Anne. Stop. Just stop. We'll figure it out. You just focus on healing. I'll handle everything else. I love you, Mom. My eyes filled with tears. I love you too, baby. I'll see you soon. I hung up and stood in my beautiful garden, surrounded by flowers and beauty and success, and none of it mattered. None of it meant anything compared to my son lying in a hospital bed, hurt and scared and alone. I went inside, told my staff I was leaving, didn't know when I'd be back. I threw clothes in a bag, grabbed my laptop and charger, my medications, everything I might need. I was in my car within 20 minutes, GPS programmed for Norfolk, driving faster than I should have but not caring. 6 hours is a long time to think. About choices and consequences. About what we owe each other. About the difference between enabling and helping, between boundaries and abandonment. I'd built good boundaries. I'd protected myself, proven my worth, established my independence. All of that was healthy, necessary, right. But boundaries aren't walls. They're not meant to keep everyone out forever. They're meant to protect you while you heal, while you grow strong enough to engage again on your own terms. David had hurt me. Deeply. But he'd also apologized, sincerely and repeatedly. He'd tried to warn me about Vanessa. He'd respected my space. He wasn't perfect, far from it, but he was trying. And now he was hurt and scared and I was his mother. That still meant something. That had to mean something. I drove through the sunset, through the darkness, stopping only once for gas and bad coffee. I arrived at the hospital a little after 10 p.m., parked in the visitor lot, and followed the signs to his room. He was in a semi-private room, though the other bed was empty. The room was dim, lit only by the monitors and the light from the hallway. David was asleep, or pretending to be. His right wrist was in a cast, his face was bruised, and he had a bandage on his forehead. He looked young and vulnerable and hurt. I sat in the chair beside his bed and took his good hand in mine. His eyes opened. Mom. You came. Of course I came. Did you think I wouldn't? I didn't know. After everything, after I lost my job and didn't tell you. I thought maybe you'd decide I wasn't worth the drive. David. I squeezed his hand. I'm angry with you for not telling me. I'm hurt that you didn't trust me enough to be honest. But you're my son. You'll always be my son. When you need me, I come. That's what mothers do. He started crying then, really crying, and I stood and wrapped my arms around him as carefully as I could, mindful of his injuries. He buried his face against my shoulder like he had when he was little, when the world had seemed too big and scary and only Mom could make it better. I've messed up everything, he sobbed. My marriage, my job, my finances. I'm 38 years old and I have nothing to show for it. No house, no savings, no future. I'm a complete failure. You're not a failure. You've had some failures, there's a difference. How do I come back from this? I pulled back, looked him in the eyes. The same way I did. One day at a time. One choice at a time. You figure out what matters, and you build toward that. It's not easy, and it's not fast, but it's possible. I'm proof it's possible. We talked for another hour, until the nurse came in and said visiting hours were over, that I'd have to come back in the morning. I kissed David's forehead, told him to rest, promised I'd be back first thing. I found a hotel near the hospital, nothing fancy, just clean and close, and collapsed on the bed fully clothed, exhausted in ways that had nothing to do with the drive. The next morning, I was back at the hospital by 7. David was awake, looking slightly better but still rough. A doctor came in and explained the extent of his injuries, the recovery timeline. Minimum 6 weeks before he could return to work, assuming he found work. Physical therapy for the wrist. Follow-up appointments for the concussion. After the doctor left, I asked the question I'd been dreading. Where are you living right now? He looked embarrassed. A friend's couch. Jake from college. You remember him? He's letting me stay with him temporarily while I figure things out. And your stuff? Storage unit. Everything I owned that wasn't in Vanessa's house, which wasn't much, is in a 10 by 10 unit in Virginia Beach. I thought about my beautiful house in Charleston. The guest rooms. The space. The peace and quiet perfect for healing. I thought about boundaries. About patterns. About the danger of falling back into old roles. But I also thought about grace. About second chances. About what it means to love someone even when they've disappointed you. When they discharge you, I said slowly, you're coming to Charleston with me. His eyes widened. Mom, no. I can't ask you to do that. I can't. You didn't ask. I'm offering. You need somewhere quiet to heal, and I have room. But David, this isn't like before. This isn't you moving in indefinitely while I take care of you. This is temporary. This is you healing physically while you figure out your next steps. You'll contribute what you can, even if it's just helping around the house when you're able. And when you're better, you'll get back on your feet. Deal? He was crying again, but nodding. Deal. God, Mom, thank you. Thank you. You're my son, I said simply. We can be angry with each other and still love each other. We can have boundaries and still show up when it matters. They discharged him that afternoon. I helped him get dressed, helped him to the car, drove us both to Jake's apartment to pick up David's few belongings. Then we drove to Charleston, arriving just as the sun was setting over the harbor. I pulled up to Hartwell House and David gasped, just like he had the first time. I still can't believe this is yours. It's mine, I said. And for now, it's yours too. Welcome home, David. I helped him inside, got him settled in the same guest room he'd stayed in before. He was exhausted from the pain medication and the trip, so I left him to rest while I went downstairs and started making phone calls. First, to the hospital billing department. I gave them my credit card information, told them to bill all of David's care to me. The woman on the phone sounded surprised. Apparently not many people just paid large hospital bills outright anymore. But I had the money, and more importantly, I had the peace of mind that came with it. Second, to a lawyer friend in Virginia who specialized in employment law. I explained David's situation, the job loss, the lack of notice, the timing with his divorce. She said she'd look into it, see if there were any grounds for a claim, at minimum help him negotiate a better severance. Third, to Joyce. I told her everything, the accident, David coming to stay, my decision to help him. Are you sure about this? She asked gently. After everything he put you through. I'm not sure about anything, I admitted. But he's hurt and he needs help and I have the ability to help him. What kind of person would I be if I just left him to struggle when I don't have to? You'd be the kind of person protecting the boundaries you worked so hard to build. Maybe. Or maybe I'd just be someone who confused boundaries with walls. I don't know, Joyce. I'm figuring it out as I go. Fair enough. Just, be careful. Don't let him take advantage of your kindness. I won't. But I also won't let fear of being taken advantage of turn me into someone cold and unforgiving. There has to be a middle ground. After I hung up, I sat on the piazza in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the city settling down for the night. Somewhere nearby, a street performer was playing guitar. A couple walked by, laughing. Life going on, indifferent and beautiful and complicated. I thought about the woman I'd been 4 years ago, packing her bags in that Norfolk house, crying in a hotel room, wondering if she had any value at all. I thought about the woman I'd become, successful, independent, strong. And I realized that true strength isn't about never helping anyone, never showing vulnerability, never taking risks on people who've hurt you. True strength is about choosing when to help, how to help, and doing it from a place of security rather than desperation. 4 years ago, helping David would have meant making myself small again, accommodating his needs at the expense of my own. Now, helping him meant inviting him into my life on my terms, with clear boundaries and expectations, from a position of power rather than weakness. That was the difference. That was everything. David stayed for 3 months. True to his word, he didn't take advantage. As soon as he was physically able, he started helping around the house, administrative tasks for the business, answering emails, managing bookings. He was good at it, actually. He had a head for numbers and organization that I lacked. We fell into a routine. Breakfasts together on the piazza. Him working in the office while I led tours. Dinners where we talked about everything and nothing, books, politics, memories, hopes for the future. He went to physical therapy twice a week. He called the lawyer regularly, worked on his resume, applied for jobs. He was trying, genuinely trying, and I watched him slowly rebuild his confidence, his sense of self-worth. We also talked about the past. Really talked about it, not just surface apologies but deep conversations about what had happened, why it had happened, how to prevent it from happening again. I was weak, he said one evening over dinner. I let Vanessa make decisions that should have been mine to make. I prioritized her comfort over your dignity. I thought being a good husband meant keeping the peace, but really I was just being a coward. Why? I asked. Why did you let her have that much power? He thought about it for a long time. Because I was afraid if I stood up to her, she'd leave. And I couldn't handle the idea of another person leaving me. Not after Dad died, not after you'd sacrificed so much to raise me alone. I thought if I just kept everyone happy, no one would leave. But in trying to keep Vanessa, I pushed you away. I chose wrong. Yes, I said. You did. I'm sorry, Mom. I know I've said it before, but I'll keep saying it as long as I need to. I'm sorry for failing you. I forgive you, I said, and I realized I meant it. Completely. I forgive you, David. He looked up, surprised. Really? Really? You hurt me, but you've also shown me you've learned from it. You've been humble, respectful, helpful. You've done the work to change. That matters. We sat in silence for a moment, both of us a little teary. Then he said, what about Vanessa? Can you forgive her? I thought about that. About Vanessa standing at my gate, crying, apologizing. About her driving away in her old car, broken and humbled. Maybe someday, I said. But that's separate from you. My relationship with you isn't dependent on my feelings about her. Fair enough. In late July, David got a job offer. A good one, a financial consulting firm in Raleigh, about a 3-hour drive from Charleston. Good salary, benefits, room for growth. He accepted immediately. I'll be close enough to visit regularly, he said excitedly. If you want me to, I mean. If that's okay. That's more than okay, I said. That's wonderful. He moved out in early August. We found him a small apartment in Raleigh, helped him furnish it with things from my storage and some new purchases. He cried when he left Charleston, hugged me tight, promised to call every week. And he did. Every Sunday, like clockwork, we'd talk for an hour. He'd tell me about work, about his new life, about the therapy he'd started to work through the divorce and his patterns of conflict avoidance. I'd tell him about the business, about new events we were planning, about the minor dramas of running a historic venue. Our relationship wasn't what it had been before, it was better, more honest, more equal, built on respect rather than obligation. And through it all, I never heard from Vanessa again. I didn't know what happened to her, where she ended up, whether she got back on her feet or continued to struggle. David mentioned occasionally that she'd moved out of state, that the divorce was finalized, that they had no contact. I thought about her sometimes. Wondered if she'd learned anything from hitting bottom. Hoped, in a distant kind of way, that she'd found her own path to redemption. But mostly, I just kept living. Leading tours, hosting events, making my beautiful house a place where history came alive and people made memories. I dated a little, nothing serious, but some pleasant companionship. I traveled when I could, made friends, served on boards, lived fully and joyfully in the life I'd built. I was happy. Genuinely. Bone deeply happy. Not because I'd gotten revenge on the people who'd hurt me, but because I'd built something meaningful despite them. Not because they'd suffered, but because I'd thrived. That, I realized, was the best revenge of all. Not making them hurt, just living well. 2 years after David moved to Raleigh, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just a Norfolk postmark and my name handwritten on the envelope in shaky cursive. I almost threw it away. It looked like junk mail, or maybe a scam. But something made me open it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered in that same shaky handwriting. It took me a moment to realize whose writing it was. Vanessa's. I sat down on the piazza with my morning coffee and started reading. Dear Eleanor, I don't know if you'll read this. I wouldn't blame you if you threw it away without opening it. But I need to write it anyway, need to tell you something I should have told you 2 years ago when I came to Charleston. I lied to you that day. Not about being sorry, that was real. But about why I came. You were right that I wanted money, but you were wrong about the reason. I wasn't just broke because of bad business decisions or because the real estate market was down. I was broke because I'm sick. I've been sick for 3 years now. Lupus, They diagnosed it finally, after 2 years of doctors telling me I was stressed or imagining things or just getting old. Lupus that attacked my kidneys, my joints, my whole system. Asterisk the medical bills destroyed me. Even with insurance. Until I lost that too when I couldn't work consistently anymore. I had to stop showing houses because some days I couldn't get out of bed. I lost clients, lost income, lost everything I'd built. Asterisk the reason my marriage to David fell apart wasn't really the affair, though that happened and it was wrong. It was because I was angry all the time, angry at my body for betraying me, angry at being sick when I'd always been healthy, angry at getting old when I tied so much of my identity to being young and attractive. Asterisk I took that anger out on everyone around me. Especially on you. Asterisk you want to know the real reason I called you dead weight that night? It's because I saw you, 71 years old and still vital, still strong, still contributing, and I was terrified. Terrified that I was going to end up like that. Old. Dependent. Unwanted. A burden. Asterisk so I made you into everything I feared about aging and illness and losing my independence. I made you the enemy instead of recognizing that you were actually a mirror showing me what grace and dignity could look like even when life gets hard. Asterisk when I came to Charleston and saw what you'd built, saw how you'd taken something that could have broken you and turned it into strength, I didn't just want your money. I wanted your secret. I wanted to know how you'd done it. How you'd faced loss and humiliation and starting over and you'd won. Asterisk but I was too proud to ask. Too ashamed to admit how completely I'd misunderstood everything. So I asked for money instead because that felt simpler, less vulnerable. Asterisk I'm writing this because I'm dying, Eleanor. The lupus is winning. My kidneys are failing and I'm not a candidate for transplant, too much damage to too many systems. The doctors give me maybe 6 months, probably less. Asterisk and I don't want to die knowing that I never told you the whole truth. Never gave you the apology you actually deserved, not the manipulative one I gave you at your gate, but a real one. Asterisk I'm sorry for what I said to you. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I'm sorry for my cruelty, my dismissiveness, my complete lack of grace. I'm sorry for turning my fear and pain into weapons I used against someone who'd done nothing but try to help. Asterisk you didn't deserve any of it. You deserved respect, kindness, gratitude. You deserved better than a scared woman lashing out because she couldn't handle her own mortality. Asterisk I hope you're still happy in that beautiful house. I hope your business is still thriving. I hope David has managed to repair at least some of the damage I helped cause. I hope you found peace. Asterisk and I hope, maybe, that knowing I finally understood, finally got it, brings you some peace too. Asterisk I won't write again. This is goodbye. Vanessa. I read that letter 3 times, sitting very still on my piazza as the morning light warmed the garden. The coffee went cold in my cup. Tears ran down my face. She was dying. Had been dying this whole time. When she came to my gate 2 years ago, she'd already known. I thought about her standing there, thin and worn, asking for help she thought she didn't deserve. I thought about turning her away, about choosing boundaries over compassion. About how right it had felt in the moment. I still thought I'd made the right choice, the only choice I could make given what I knew then. Vanessa had asked for money she would never have been able to repay, and giving it to her would have been enabling, would have violated my hard-won boundaries. But if I'd known she was dying, that she was scared, that beneath the manipulation was just a sick woman terrified of the future, would I have responded differently? I didn't know. I honestly didn't know. I called David immediately. He answered cheerful and bright. Hey, Mom. How's Charleston? I got a letter from Vanessa. His tone changed instantly. What? When? What did it say? I read him the letter, word for word. There was silence on the other end of the line when I finished. David. I didn't know. His voice was thick. Mom, I swear to God, I didn't know she was that sick. I knew she had lupus, knew she'd been having health problems, but she never told me it was terminal. We haven't spoken in over a year. Jesus. I don't know what to say. Neither do I. We sat with it for a moment, both processing. Are you going to respond? He finally asked. How? There's no return address. You could try to find her. Hire someone. She's probably still in Norfolk, or maybe she moved back to where she grew up. Michigan, I think. Or was it Minnesota? God, I should know that. Do you want me to find her? He was quiet for a long time. I don't know. Part of me feels like I should see her. Should. I don't know. Say goodbye? Make peace? But another part of me is still so angry about everything. About the affair, about how she treated you, about the way our marriage imploded. Can you be angry at someone and still grieve for them? Yes, I said quietly. You absolutely can. Both things can be true at once. What are you going to do? I looked at the letter in my hand, at Vanessa's shaky handwriting, at the honesty she'd finally found when she had nothing left to lose. I don't know yet. Let me think about it. I spent the next 3 days thinking about very little else. I went through my routines, tours, meetings, meals, but my mind was elsewhere. I kept coming back to that day at the gate, to Vanessa's tears, to the choice I'd made. I'd turned her away because I'd thought she was manipulating me, because I'd thought she was playing on my emotions to get money she didn't deserve. And I'd been right about the money part, but wrong about everything else. She hadn't been manipulating me. She'd been drowning and reaching for anything that might keep her afloat. She'd been terrified and desperate and dying, and I'd seen only the surface, the woman who'd hurt me, not the woman who was suffering. Joyce found me in the garden on the 3rd day, pulling weeds that didn't need pulling. You've been weird since you got that letter, she said bluntly. Joyce didn't do subtle. You going to tell me what's going on in that head of yours? I told her. Everything. The letter, the diagnosis, the revelation. She listened quietly, then sat beside me on the garden bench. What do you think you should do? I don't know. Part of me thinks I should try to find her. Should. I don't know, make peace before she dies. But another part of me thinks it's not my responsibility, that I don't owe her anything, especially not comfort in her final months. You're right, you don't owe her anything. But what if it's not about owing? What if it's about choosing to show grace even when it's not required? Joyce studied me. Eleanor, you're one of the kindest people I know. But kindness isn't the same as setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. What would seeing Vanessa actually accomplish? For you or for her? I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe just closure. For both of us. And if it reopens wounds, if it brings back all that pain and humiliation, then I'll deal with it. I'm stronger now than I was. Strong enough to face her again, I think. Joyce shook her head, smiling. You're going to do it, aren't you? You're going to find her. Yeah, I said. I think I am. It took less than a week. I hired a private investigator. The irony of that, considering David had done the same thing years ago trying to find me. The investigator tracked Vanessa to a hospice facility in Norfolk. She'd been there for 3 weeks, her condition deteriorating rapidly. I called the facility, spoke with a nurse, explained who I was and that I wanted to visit. The nurse was kind but cautious. Vanessa doesn't get many visitors, she said carefully. Are you family? Former family. It's complicated. Most family is. Let me ask her if she's willing to see you. Can I call you back? She called back an hour later. Vanessa was surprised, but she said yes. She'd like to see you. I drove to Norfolk the next day. The same drive I'd made to see David in the hospital, but this felt different. Heavier. More fraught with complicated emotions. The hospice was nice as such places can be. Quiet, clean, filled with soft lighting and softer voices. A place designed for dying with dignity. The nurse led me to Vanessa's room. She's weak today, so don't be alarmed by how she looks. And please don't stay too long, she tires easily. I nodded, took a breath, and went in. Vanessa was in a hospital bed, propped up with pillows. She'd lost so much weight that I barely recognized her. Her blonde hair was thin and dull, her skin had a grayish pallor, and her eyes seemed huge in her gaunt face. She looked at least 20 years older than she was. But when she saw me, she smiled. A real smile, surprised and grateful. Eleanor, you actually came. I sat in the chair beside her bed. I got your letter. I didn't think you'd respond. Didn't really expect you to, honestly. I just needed to tell you the truth before. She gestured vaguely at herself, at the four-pole, at the reality of where she was. How are you feeling? She laughed, which turned into a cough. Like I'm dying, mostly. It's not as dramatic as movies make it seem. Mostly I'm just tired. So tired. We sat in silence for a moment. I didn't know what to say, how to bridge the chasm of history between us. Thank you for telling me the truth, I finally said. About being sick. About why you really came to Charleston. I should have told you then. Should have been honest instead of trying to manipulate you. But I was ashamed. Ashamed of being sick, of being weak, of needing help. Especially from you, the woman I'd called dead weight. The irony wasn't lost on me. Vanessa, I'm sorry you're going through this. I'm sorry you've been suffering. Don't. She held up a hand, thin as a bird's wing. Don't apologize to me. You have nothing to be sorry for. I'm the one who should be sorry. I am sorry. For everything. I know. I got that from your letter. Do you forgive me? She asked, and her voice was small, vulnerable. Really forgive me? Not just saying the words but actually meaning them. I thought about that question. Did I forgive her? Could I? I thought about standing at my gate 2 years ago, angry and righteous and certain. I thought about everything I'd built, every way I'd proven my worth. I thought about David in the hospital, about choosing grace over grudges. And I realized that forgiveness wasn't about Vanessa deserving it. It wasn't even about her at all. It was about me choosing not to carry anger and hurt into whatever time I had left. It was about recognizing that hurt people, that cruelty often comes from pain, that understanding doesn't excuse but it does contextualize. Yes, I said. I forgive you. Completely. She started crying, silent tears running down her face. Thank you. God, thank you. I don't deserve it, but thank you. I reached out and took her hand, that skeletal hand that had once wielded power and now could barely squeeze back. None of us deserve grace, Vanessa. That's what makes it grace. We talked for another hour. She told me about her diagnosis, about the 2 years of being dismissed by doctors before someone finally figured out what was wrong. She told me about watching her body betray her, about losing her business, her marriage, her future. She told me about the fear, the anger, the desperate scrambling to hold on to control even as everything spiraled away. I made so many mistakes, she said. Hurt so many people. David most of all. Does he hate me? No. He's angry, and he's hurt, but he doesn't hate you. He's processing it all, trying to understand. He didn't know you were this sick. I didn't want him to know. Didn't want him to feel obligated to take care of me after I'd destroyed our marriage. He deserved to be free of me. Do you want to see him? I could call him, ask him to come. She thought about that for a long time. No, I think it's better if I don't. He's rebuilding his life. Let him do that without dragging him back into my mess. But, could you tell him something for me? Of course. Tell him I'm sorry. Tell him I know I destroyed what we had, that it was my fault, and that I hope he finds happiness. Tell him. She paused, gathering strength. Tell him I did love him, in my own broken way. I just didn't know how to love him well. I'll tell him. We sat quietly as the afternoon light slanted through the window. I could hear sounds from the hallway, soft footsteps, a distant television, someone coughing. The sounds of life and death existing side by side. Eleanor. Vanessa said, her voice getting weaker. Can I ask you one more thing? Anything. How did you do it? How did you start over at 71 and build something so incredible? What's the secret? I thought about that question, the same one she'd asked in her letter, the same one people asked me all the time when they learned my story. There's no secret, I said. Just a choice. A choice to believe you're worth more than other people said you were. A choice to stop waiting for permission to matter and just matter. A choice to build instead of crumble. I wish I'd made that choice. You still can. Even now. You can choose how you spend whatever time you have left. You can choose grace, gratitude, peace. It's never too late for that. She smiled faintly. You're a better person than I am. I'm just a person who's been given second chances and decided to take them. You've been given one too, you know. This time, right now. What you do with it is up to you. A nurse came in then, checking monitors, adjusting the fall. I'm sorry, but Vanessa needs to rest now. She's had quite a bit of excitement for one day. I stood, squeezed Vanessa's hand one last time. Thank you for the letter. For the truth. It mattered. Thank you for coming. For forgiving me. It matters more than you know. I left the hospice with tears running down my face, but they weren't sad tears. Or not only sad. They were complicated tears, grief and relief and gratitude and sorrow all mixed together. I called David from the car. Told him everything. Told him what Vanessa had said, what she'd asked me to tell him. He cried. Then he asked, should I go see her? That's up to you. There's no right answer. What would you do? I thought about it. I think I'd go. Not because you owe her anything, but because you might regret it if you don't. Say goodbye on your terms. Find whatever closure you need. Will you come with me? I don't think I can do it alone. Of course. When do you want to go? This weekend? I can drive down Friday night, we can go Saturday morning. That works. I'll be here. We went together that Saturday. I waited in the hospice lobby while David spent an hour with Vanessa. When he came out, his eyes were red but his face was calm. How was it? I asked. Hard. Good. Sad. Necessary. He took a shaky breath. She apologized. Really apologized, not just saying the words but meaning them. And I. He wiped his eyes. I forgave her, Mom. I didn't think I could, but sitting there looking at her, seeing how sick she is, I realized I didn't want to carry anger anymore. It's too heavy. I'm proud of you. She asked me to do something. And I need to know if you're okay with it. What? She wants to be cremated when she dies, and she wants her ashes scattered in the ocean. She said she always loved the water, that it made her feel free. But she has no family who'll do it. Her parents are dead, she's estranged from her sister. She asked if I would. If we would. I looked at my son, this good man who'd made mistakes but was trying to be better. Yes. We can do that. Vanessa died 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning while I was leading a tour about Civil War history. The hospice called David, who called me. We made the arrangements together. 2 weeks after that, on a clear Sunday morning, David and I stood on a beach near Charleston. Not the tourist beaches, but a quieter one where locals went. We waded into the water, holding the box with Vanessa's ashes between us. Should we say something? David asked. If you want to. He thought for a moment, then spoke. Vanessa, you were complicated. Our marriage was complicated. But you were also human, and you suffered, and you tried to make things right at the end. I hope you find peace now. I hope you're free. I added, and I hope you know that you were forgiven. By both of us. Together, we scattered her ashes into the ocean. They caught the sunlight for a moment, glittering like diamonds, then disappeared into the waves. We stood there for a long time, watching the water, saying our final goodbyes. As we walked back to the car, David put his arm around my shoulders. Thank you, Mom. For everything. For forgiving her. For forgiving me. For showing me what grace looks like even when it's hard. You're welcome, sweetheart. I love you. I love you too. We drove back to Charleston, to my beautiful house and my beautiful life. That evening, I sat on the piazza with a glass of wine and thought about everything. About Vanessa, about David, about the journey that had brought me here. I thought about the woman I'd been 4 years ago, broken and lost. I thought about the woman I'd become, strong and successful. And I thought about the woman I was now, in this moment. Someone who'd learned that strength isn't about never bending, and success isn't about never helping others, and grace is always a choice you make regardless of what anyone deserves. Life is messy and complicated and full of people who hurt each other, sometimes on purpose and sometimes accidentally. We're all just doing our best with the tools we have, the wounds we carry, the fears we hide. And forgiveness, real forgiveness, isn't about erasing the past or pretending it didn't hurt. It's about choosing not to let that hurt define your future. It's about recognizing that everyone is fighting battles you can't see, carrying pain you'll never understand, and sometimes the cruelest people are just the most broken. That doesn't excuse cruelty. But it does explain it. And explanation, understanding, compassion. These things don't make you weak. They make you human. After Vanessa's death, something shifted in me. Not dramatically. I didn't wake up one morning a completely different person. But gradually, subtly, I found myself thinking bigger about what Hartwell House could be. It had started as revenge, if I'm honest. Started as proof that I wasn't dead weight, that I had value, that I could build something impressive. And it had succeeded at that. But now, 3 years into running the business, after everything with David and Vanessa, I realized I wanted it to mean something more. I wanted it to be about more than just me. It started with Margaret. She showed up for a tour one Wednesday in October, a woman about my age with silver hair and tired eyes. The tour was one of our smaller ones, just 6 people, and I noticed her hanging back, looking at everything with intense focus. After the tour, she approached me. "Mrs. Grayson, could I talk to you for a moment?" "Of course. Call me Eleanor." We sat in the library, and she told me her story. She'd been a teacher, like me, married 42 years. Her husband had died 6 months ago, and his death had revealed that he'd been hiding debt, significant debt. She'd had to sell their house, most of their belongings. She was living with her daughter now, in a small apartment, feeling displaced and useless. "I saw your house on social media," she said. "Read your story. About how you started over. And I needed to see it for myself. Needed to know it was possible." My heart broke for her. I saw myself in her eyes, that lost, frightened woman wondering if her life was over. "It's possible," I told her. "It's absolutely possible. You're what, 65? 67. You could have another 20, 30 years. That's not an ending, Margaret. That's a whole other life waiting to be lived." We talked for 2 hours. I told her about Constance's inheritance, yes, but also about the work I'd put in, the risks I'd taken, the fear I'd pushed through. I told her that starting over doesn't always mean building a business. Sometimes it just means finding new purpose, new meaning, new ways to contribute. Before she left, she hugged me tight. "Thank you. You've given me hope." After she left, I sat in that library thinking, how many other women like Margaret were out there? How many older women who'd been told, directly or indirectly, that their useful life was over, that they should just fade quietly into the background, stop taking up space, stop wanting things? I called Joyce that evening. "I want to do something. Something bigger than just tours and events." "Okay. Like what?" "I don't know exactly. Maybe workshops. Talks. Something for women who are starting over later in life. Women who need to know it's possible." Joyce was quiet for a moment. "That's a beautiful idea. But Eleanor, are you prepared for what that might open up? For the time commitment, the emotional labor?" "I don't know. But I have to try. I can't just keep this to myself anymore. It feels selfish." We spent the next month planning. Joyce connected me with a nonprofit that worked with older women in crisis. I reached out to other business owners I'd met through the historic Charleston Foundation. I researched programs, models, what worked and what didn't. And then, in January, we launched the Hartwell House Fellowship Program. The concept was simple. 4 times a year, we'd bring together a small group of women, no more than 12, for a weekend intensive. They'd stay at Hartwell House, learn about business basics, financial planning, emotional resilience. They'd hear from speakers, do workshops, share their stories. And they'd leave with resources, connections, and most importantly, hope. I funded the first few sessions myself, covered all costs so the women could attend free. I wanted no barriers, not financial ones, anyway. The first session was in March. 12 women, ages 58 to 74, from all over South Carolina and North Carolina. Teachers, nurses, administrative assistants, stay-at-home mothers whose children had grown. Women who'd been widowed, divorced, laid off, pushed out. Women who felt invisible. We started Friday evening with dinner on the piazza. Nothing fancy, just good food and conversation. I told my story, the whole thing, holding nothing back. The humiliation, the inheritance, the business, the revenge that had turned into something more meaningful. And then I asked them to share their stories. They poured out. Stories of loss and betrayal, of financial devastation, of feeling worthless and unwanted. Stories that mirrored my own in 1,000 different ways. We cried together, laughed together, recognized ourselves in each other. Saturday, we had workshops. A financial planner taught them about managing money, about retirement planning, about the difference between having enough and having security. A therapist talked about processing grief and trauma. A business consultant, not Joyce, someone who specialized in small business and solopreneurship, talked about turning skills into income. And Sunday morning, before they left, we sat in a circle in the library and each woman shared one thing they were going to do differently, one way they were going to reclaim their life. "I'm going back to school," said Patricia, who'd been a nurse but lost her license after her husband's gambling debts destroyed their finances. "For my master's. I'm 62, but so what? I'll be 64 with a master's degree or 64 without one. Either way, I'll be 64. "I'm starting a dog walking business," said Janet, whose husband had left her for a younger woman and taken most of their savings. "I love dogs, I'm good with them, and people will pay for reliable service. It's not going to make me rich, but it'll be mine." "I'm going to stop apologizing for taking up space," said Rose, the oldest at 74. "I'm going to stop making myself small to make other people comfortable. I matter. My life matters. And I'm going to act like it." I cried watching them, these brave, beautiful women who'd come in feeling broken and were leaving with fire in their eyes. After that first session, word spread. Women started applying for future sessions. We had to create a waiting list. I brought in more facilitators, more speakers. We added sessions, summer, fall, winter, spring. 4 times a year, 12 women at a time, all of them leaving transformed. But I knew we could do more. In our second year, we added a microgrant program. Small amounts, $5,000, but enough to help women start a business, go back to school, get training. We funded it through donations from tour proceeds and private donors Joyce helped me connect with. We started a mentorship program, pairing fellowship alumni with women just entering the program. We created an online community where they could support each other, share resources, celebrate wins. And slowly, beautifully, we watched women transform. Women who'd been told they were too old, too poor, too uneducated, too broken. They started businesses, went back to school, wrote books, created art, found joy. Margaret, the first woman who'd inspired all of this, attended our second session. 6 months later, she'd started a tutoring business for children with learning disabilities, combining her teaching background with training she'd gotten through our grant program. She was supporting herself, living independently, thriving. "You saved my life," she told me when she came back for a reunion event. "No," I said. "You saved your own life. I just reminded you it was worth saving." David came to visit one weekend during a fellowship session. He sat in on some of the workshops, watched me facilitate, saw the women's faces light up as they shared their plans. Afterward, we sat on the piazza and he said, "Mom, this is incredible. What you've built here, it's not just a business anymore. It's a movement." "I don't know about movement," I said, laughing. "That feels grandiose." "No, I mean it. You're changing lives. You're showing women that their story isn't over just because someone said it was. That's powerful." I thought about that. About power. About how I'd once equated it with success, with money, with proving people wrong. But real power, I was learning, wasn't about any of that. Real power was about lifting others up. About using what you'd learned, what you'd built, to create opportunities for people who needed them. The fellowship program grew. By the 3rd year, we had corporate sponsors. We were written up in magazines, featured on podcasts, invited to speak at conferences. I gave talks about entrepreneurship, about resilience, about starting over. And through it all, I stayed grounded in the original mission, helping women like me. Women who'd been dismissed, discarded, told they didn't matter. Showing them they were wrong. The funny thing about revenge is that it's ultimately empty. You can prove people wrong, you can show them what they missed, you can build something so impressive they can't ignore it. But at the end of the day, their opinion doesn't matter. It never did. What matters is what you think of yourself. What you build not for them, but for you. And eventually, for others who need what you've learned. That's the real victory. Not making your enemies sorry, but making yourself strong. Not proving your worth to people who doubted you, but proving it to the person who doubted herself most, you. I thought about Vanessa sometimes. About how she'd spent her last months scared and alone, eaten alive by illness and regret. About how different her life might have been if she'd learned sooner that your worth isn't determined by your youth, your beauty, your success. That you're valuable simply because you're human, because you're here, because you have something to offer the world. I wished I could have taught her that. Wished she'd learned it before it was too late. But I was teaching it now, to every woman who came through our doors. And they were teaching it to others. And slowly, one woman at a time, we were changing the narrative about what it means to be older, to be female, to be starting over. We were rewriting the story, making it one about power and possibility instead of decline and irrelevance. And that, I was learning, was better than any revenge I could have imagined. Asterisk. 6 years after I left David and Vanessa's house with 2 suitcases and a broken heart, I stood in the Hartwell House Library surrounded by 75 women. It was the 5th anniversary celebration of our fellowship program, and every single woman who'd been through it was invited back. They came from all over. From North Carolina and South Carolina, from Georgia and Virginia, even a few from farther away. Women who'd been broken and had rebuilt themselves. Women who'd found their strength again. The room buzzed with conversation, with laughter, with joy. I watched Patricia, now working as a nurse practitioner after finishing her master's degree at 64. I watched Janet, whose dog walking business had expanded into a full pet care service employing 5 people. I watched Rose, 7 to 9 now, who'd published a memoir about her life and was working on her 2nd book. I watched all of them and felt overwhelming gratitude. Not just for what I'd built, but for what they taught me. About resilience, about grace, about the 1,000 different ways to start over. David was there too, with his girlfriend Amanda, a kind woman who worked in education and made him laugh. They'd been together for a year, taking it slow, both of them having learned from past mistakes. She treated me with warmth and respect, and I genuinely liked her. Joyce was there, of course, my friend and advisor who'd helped me navigate every step of this journey. And Thomas, my event coordinator who'd become like family. And William, the gardener who'd helped transform the wild garden into something magical. My people. My chosen family. Built not from obligation but from mutual respect and genuine care. As the party wound down, as women started saying their goodbyes and making plans to stay in touch, Margaret pulled me aside. She was glowing, happy, completely transformed from the frightened woman who'd taken that tour 3 years ago. Eleanor, I have something to tell you. Oh. I've been working with a foundation. They want to expand what you've started here. They want to create Hartwell House-style programs in other cities, help more women. And they want you to be the national director, to help set it all up. My mouth fell open. What? I know it's overwhelming. But Eleanor, what you've built here, it's too important to stay in just one place. There are women everywhere who need this. Who need to know it's possible. I didn't know what to say. The idea of expanding, of taking what we'd created and multiplying it across the country, it was terrifying and exciting in equal measure. Let me think about it, I said. Of course. But Eleanor, you've already changed so many lives. Imagine how many more you could change. After everyone left, after the house was quiet again, I sat in the library with David. We'd fallen into a rhythm of these quiet conversations, father and son becoming equals, friends even. What are you going to do? He asked. About the foundation offer. I don't know. Part of me wants to say yes immediately, but another part worries about losing what makes this place special. About growing too fast, becoming too corporate, losing the personal touch. You'll figure it out. You always do. He smiled at me. Mom, can I tell you something? Always. When Vanessa called you dead weight, when I stood there and said nothing, that was the worst moment of my life. Not the divorce, not losing my job, not the accident. That moment. Because I knew, even then, that I was betraying someone who'd never betrayed me. And I've spent every day since trying to be better, to be the man you raised me to be instead of the coward I was that night. I reached over and took his hand. David, you've become that man. You've done the work. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you too. Prouder than I can say. Look at what you've built. Not just this business, but this community. This movement, like I said. You took the worst thing that ever happened to you and turned it into something that's helping hundreds of people. That's heroic, Mom. I laughed, uncomfortable with the praise. It's not heroic. It's just refusing to give up. That's what heroism is. It's not about being fearless. It's about being afraid and doing it anyway. It's about falling down and getting back up. It's about being hurt and choosing to heal instead of staying wounded. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, both of us lost in thought. What do you think Vanessa would say? I finally asked. If she could see all this. David considered. I think she'd be amazed. And ashamed. And hopefully, somewhere, proud that the woman she tried to diminish became someone who lifts others up instead. I hope so. I genuinely hope so. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house, running my hands over the banisters I'd restored, looking at the photographs of fellowship participants covering one wall in my office, standing in the garden under the stars. I thought about the woman I'd been 6 years ago. About how small I'd felt, how worthless, how done. About the pot roast getting cold on the table while Vanessa called me dead weight and David said nothing. That woman felt like a stranger now. Like someone I used to know but didn't recognize anymore. I'd spent the first year after leaving proving I wasn't dead weight. I'd spent the second and third years building something successful. But the last 3 years, those had been about something else entirely. About purpose. About legacy. About using what I'd learned to help others learn it too. And that's when I realized what my answer to the foundation would be. Yes. Yes, because there were too many women out there feeling what I'd felt, believing what I'd briefly believed. That their life was over, that they didn't matter, that they should just fade away quietly. Yes, because what we'd built at Hartwell House was too important to keep in one place, too powerful to limit to 12 women at a time. Yes, because I was 77 years old and I'd learned that age is just a number, that you're never too old to start something new, to take a risk, to change lives including your own. I called Margaret the next morning. I'll do it. Tell the foundation I'm in. The next year was a whirlwind. We created a blueprint for the program, wrote training materials, found locations in 5 other cities. We hired facilitators, built partnerships, created a non-profit structure that could sustain the work. And one by one, new Hartwell House programs launched. In Atlanta. In Richmond. In Nashville. In Raleigh, where David volunteered as a mentor, helping women with financial planning. Each location had its own flavor, its own community, but the core mission stayed the same, showing women that their story wasn't over. That they could start again. That they mattered. The original Hartwell House in Charleston remained my home base, the heart of everything. I still led tours, still hosted events, still personally facilitated one fellowship session each year. But now I also traveled, visiting the other locations, training new facilitators, speaking at events. I became something I never expected to be. A voice for older women starting over. I gave TED Talks. I wrote a book, nothing fancy, just my story and the lessons I'd learned. I was interviewed on podcasts, featured in documentaries, invited to speak at conferences. And through it all, I stayed grounded in the reality that had started everything. I was just a woman who'd been called dead weight and had decided that wasn't true. Everything else flowed from that one decision to believe in my own worth. On my 80th birthday, David threw me a party at Hartwell House. All my fellowship women came, my staff, my friends, representatives from all the program locations. Even Amanda's parents, who I'd grown close to. There were speeches, too many speeches, really, all of them making me cry. Stories about how the program had changed lives, how I changed lives. A video montage of fellowship participants talking about what the program meant to them. And then David stood up to speak. Most of you know my mother's story, he began. How she was told she was dead weight, how she left with nothing and built all of this. But what you might not know is my part in that story. How I stood silent when she needed me to speak. How I failed her in the most fundamental way possible. The room got quiet. He'd never spoken publicly about this before. I've spent the last 6 years trying to earn back her trust, her respect, her love. Not because she withheld them, she didn't. But because I needed to prove to myself that I could be better than the man I was that night. And in watching her build all of this, in watching her turn pain into purpose, I learned what real strength looks like. It doesn't look like never making mistakes. It looks like making them and choosing to grow from them. It looks like being hurt and choosing to heal others instead of hurting them back. He turned to look at me, his eyes wet. Mom, you're the strongest person I know. Not because you never fell down, but because you got back up and then reached back to help others up too. Happy birthday. I love you. And I'm so proud to be your son. I was crying. Everyone was crying. I stood and hugged him tight, this man who'd been a weak boy but had grown into someone strong, someone good. I'm proud of you too, I whispered. So proud. After the cake was cut and the music started, I found myself alone on the piazza for a moment, looking out at the garden lit with string lights, listening to the laughter and music drifting from inside. I thought about Constance Hartwell, who'd given me this house, this chance. I wished I could tell her what it had become, how her gift to one woman had rippled out to touch hundreds. I thought about Vanessa, gone now for 4 years, her ashes long since dissolved in the ocean. I hoped she'd found peace. I hoped she'd understood, at the end, that her worth wasn't tied to her youth or her health or her success. That she'd mattered simply because she existed. And I thought about that woman 6 years ago, standing in a Norfolk living room being told she was dead weight. I wished I could go back and tell her what was coming. Tell her that the pain she was feeling would transform into purpose. That the humiliation would fuel determination. That she would not just survive, she would thrive. But maybe that's the point. Maybe we can't know, in our darkest moments, what's waiting on the other side. Maybe we just have to trust that there is another side, and that we're strong enough to reach it. There you are. Joyce came out onto the piazza, holding 2 glasses of champagne. You're not allowed to hide at your own party. Not hiding. Just reflecting. She handed me a glass, clinked hers against mine. 80 years. Quite a milestone. Quite a life. You know what I love most about your story? Joyce said. It's not the revenge. It's not even the success, though that's impressive. It's that you could have stayed bitter. You could have spent these years angry at David and Vanessa, proving your worth to people who didn't deserve your energy. But instead, you used it to lift up other women. You turned your pain into their possibility. I had to. Bitterness is exhausting. At some point, you realize you can spend your energy on anger or on building something beautiful. I chose beautiful. And look what you built. She gestured at the house, at the party inside, at everything we'd created. This is your legacy, Eleanor. Not just a successful business, but a movement that's changing lives. Women who would have given up are thriving because of you. That matters. That's immortality. I thought about legacy. About what we leave behind when we're gone. I'd always thought legacy was for rich people, famous people, people who did big important things. But maybe legacy is simpler than that. Maybe it's just how you treat people. How you show up when it's hard. How you use your pain, because everyone has pain, to either hurt others or help them. Can I tell you something? I said to Joyce. Something I've never told anyone. Of course. That night when Vanessa called me dead weight and David said nothing, there was a moment where I thought about ending it. Not dramatically, not immediately, but I thought, what's the point? Who would even care if I was gone? I was 71, alone, unwanted. It felt like my life was over. Joyce's hand found mine, squeezed tight. But then I got angry instead of sad. And the anger kept me alive long enough to find that letter from Constance's lawyer. And that's when everything changed. But Joyce, if that letter had been thrown away, if I'd never gotten it, I don't know if I would have found another way up. I was that close to just fading away. But you didn't. No, I didn't. And now I've helped dozens of women who felt that same way. Women standing on that same edge, wondering if their life is over. And I get to tell them, from experience, that it's not. That there's so much life left to live if you choose to live it. We stood in silence for a moment, both processing that truth. You know what the best revenge is? Joyce finally said. What? Living so fully, so joyfully, so purposefully that the people who tried to make you small become completely irrelevant to your happiness. I laughed. That's perfect. That's exactly it. We went back inside to the party. I danced with David, with Thomas, with a dozen fellowship women who insisted the birthday girl needed to dance. I ate too much cake. I opened presents I didn't need but appreciated anyway. I gave a speech thanking everyone for coming, for supporting the work, for believing in second chances. And late that night, after everyone had left or gone to bed in the guest rooms, I sat alone in the library with a glass of wine and thought about the question Joyce had asked me years ago. What do you think Vanessa would say if she could see all this? I told David I thought she'd be amazed and ashamed and hopefully proud. But sitting there at 80 years old, with 6 years of perspective and growth, I realized there was more to it than that. I think Vanessa would recognize herself in the women we help. She'd see her own fear of aging, her own terror of becoming irrelevant, her own desperate attempt to matter. And maybe, if she could see it all, she'd understand that what she was really afraid of wasn't me taking up space in her house. It was the future version of herself, the one she became at the end. Sick, broke, dependent. She'd projected that fear onto me and tried to eliminate it by eliminating me. But you can't eliminate fear by pushing it away. You can only transform it by facing it. That's what I'd learned. That's what I taught now. Fear doesn't go away, you just get stronger than it. I finished my wine, turned off the lights, and climbed the stairs to my bedroom. From my window, I could see the harbor, the lights of the city, the vast darkness of the ocean beyond. Somewhere out there, Vanessa's ashes were part of that water now, returned to the freedom she'd craved. I hoped she'd found it. I genuinely did. And I hoped that somewhere, somehow, she knew I'd forgiven her. Not because she'd earned it or deserved it, but because carrying unforgiveness was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I'd chosen to set it down. To let it go. To free myself. That's what forgiveness is, not a gift you give to the person who hurt you, but a gift you give yourself. I'm 85 now. The programs we started have expanded to 23 cities. We've helped over 3,000 women rebuild their lives. The original fellowship has spawned variations, programs for women escaping domestic violence, for women re-entering the workforce after incarceration, for immigrant women starting over in a new country. Hartwell House in Charleston is still the heart of it all, still my home. I don't lead as many tours anymore, my knees finally told me it was time to slow down, but I still facilitate one fellowship session a year. Still tell my story. Still watch women's faces light up when they realize their story isn't over. David visits every month. He and Amanda got married 3 years ago, and they're talking about adopting a child. An older child, one who needs a second chance. I told him that was perfect, that our family specializes in second chances. Joyce is still my best friend, though she's semi-retired now too. We have lunch every Tuesday, gossiping and laughing and solving the world's problems over sweet tea and whatever's on special that day. And me? I'm still here. Still relevant. Still mattering. Still proving, every single day, that you're never too old to start over, to build something meaningful, to change lives. Sometimes people ask me if I regret what happened 6 years ago. If I wish David had defended me, wish Vanessa had never said those words, wish my life hadn't been appended. And the honest answer is no. I don't regret it. Because if none of that had happened, I'd still be living small, making myself acceptable, believing I was a burden. I'd be dead weight, just not in the way Vanessa meant. Instead, I'm free. Free to take up space, to matter, to be loud when I want and quiet when I choose. Free to build empires and change lives and show other women that the end of one chapter is just the beginning of another. That's the real story here. Not that someone called me dead weight and I proved them wrong, though I did. Not that I built a successful business from nothing, though I did that too. Not even that I forgave the people who hurt me, though forgiveness changed everything. The real story is that I learned who I was when everything was stripped away. And I discovered I was enough. I was always enough. I just had to believe it. So if you're reading this, if you're watching from wherever you are, wherever life has taken you, and you've been called a burden, told you're too old, pushed aside like you don't matter, I want you to hear this. They're wrong. You matter. You have value. You have so much left to give, so much left to build, so much life left to live. Your story isn't over. It's not even close to over. This is just the chapter where you discover what you're really made of. This is the chapter where you rise. And trust me, you'll be amazed at how high you can fly when you finally stop letting other people clip your wings. Now go. Go build your empire, whatever that looks like. Go prove to yourself, not to anyone else, but to yourself, that you are strong and capable and worthy. Go be the woman you were always meant to be. I believe in you. Because I was you. And if I could do it, you absolutely can too. This is Eleanor Grayson, signing off from my beautiful home in Charleston, surrounded by the life I built and the legacy I chose. Thank you for listening to my story. Now go write yours. And don't forget, check the description box below for more stories like this one. Stories about people who refused to stay down, who rebuilt themselves, who chose strength over surrender. Because the world needs more stories like that. More people like that. More people like you.